Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're starting part 1 of an awesome What If Deku was called the voice stealer story. If you want to see part 2, drop a comment below and tell me what you think. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Now let's jump into the story. Izuku is born mute. He remembers that much. He remembers struggling to communicate with the other kids because he couldn't speak and none of them knew sign language. Remembers being mocked because he couldn't talk and going home in tears as he soundlessly voices his frustrated sadness because he just wants to be normal as his mother hums and pets his curls. His quirk doesn't come in at 4 like everyone else, and for a while there, they think he's quirkless, which just adds a whole different pattern to his torments as the other kids find new ways to make fun of him. Worthless, defective, quirkless, Deku. His 6th the first time he speaks only, it's not his voice that comes out. His mother had been talking on the phone and Izuku had wanted a cookie, but she wasn't paying attention and can't see him signing at her, and it just comes out. His mother's voice comes out of his throat. Needless to say, they are both shocked, his mother hanging up quickly to look at him. After a few more tries, it happens again and Izuku bursts into tears because he's talking, but it's not even his voice. He stole his mother's voice. They go to a quirk specialist the next day, and after many extensive tests and Izuku nervously demonstrating his new ability, even stealing the doctor's voice, they soon quickly narrow down what his quirk is. A quirk counselor confirms it after a few more sessions, and they soon have a name for his quirk, voice box. Izuku doesn't have a voice. The doctors confirmed it already after many tests. His vocal cords never developed right when he was still in his mother, and so he can't actually physically speak. Instead, his quirk allows him to copy other people's voices he's heard and reuse them as his own voice. He can even copy sounds, which is pretty cool. The doctors patiently explain that he doesn't steal people's voices. They can still talk with their voice, even after he copies it. Of course, his classmates don't see it that way. Voice thief and voice stealer becomes the new chance they throw at him after his new quirk is announced to his class. Izuku using a voice he heard on TV to speak quietly. It usually goes 3 ways when it comes to others and his quirk. They either refuse to speak to him thinking he can steal their voices, they try to get him to mimic sounds like he's some parrot on display for their amusement, or they lash out at him for stealing their voice even though that's not how his quirk works at all. Izuku soon learns over the years it's better to remain silent than to engage with any of them, refusing to speak unless he absolutely has to and getting away with signing when he can. He does play around with his quirk at home though when his mother's away at work. He quickly learns that he can copy any sound. If it makes a sound, he can recreate it. He remembers every sound, too. He can recall exactly the way a jar of pickles pops open when its seal is broken like he's just heard it, or the way 𝐒𝐭𝐴𝐺's explosions pop like pop rocks in your mouth when he uses his quirk, though they've gotten louder here recently. He can also throw his voice, making a sound appear to be coming from somewhere else without opening his mouth, which means he technically doesn't even need to move his mouth to speak, but that makes people even more uncomfortable, so he still does it. It takes a bit of practice, but he soon learns to make new sounds he's never heard. Mixing voices and sounds in interesting ways, and he eventually finds a mix of voices he likes and wants to use as his voice, what he'd wanted his voice to sound like when he was younger before his quirk came in. By the time elementary ends, Izuku has a good grasp on his quirk and no friends, but that's okay. His first day of middle school dawns as he expects, with 𝐒𝐭𝐴𝐺 being the center of attention and everyone avoiding talking to him as the others warn those who don't know about his quirk. 4 days later, a late arrival is introduced to class. Izuku perks up a bit because new people are interesting with new voices to study. The young teen that comes into class has a head full of messy purple hair, stony purple eyes, and the shadow of bruises across his face. Yodru-sensei introduces him as Shinso Hitoshi, who had suddenly changed schools right at the start of the semester, and it's why he was starting so late. Yodru-sensei makes him reveal his quirk, despite the obvious discomfort at doing so, and the class grows quiet with a few mutterings as he tells them, brainwashing. Nervous eyes watch Shinso as he walks to his seat, the boy ignoring them with shoulders hunched. Izuku sends him a little wave, but if he sees it, he doesn't react, and then the class is forced to look ahead as Yodru-sensei starts the announcements. Lunch comes around and Izuku looks around for Shinso but doesn't see him at first until he spots a head of purple hair heading down the hall away from the cafeteria. Taking his tray, 𝐒𝐿 silently follows, no one looking his way, and it takes a few minutes to find 𝐴𝐻𝐿 sitting outside near the wall under a tree. 𝐒𝐿 shuffles his feet as he gets closer, and 𝐴𝐻𝐿 looks up with a glare at 𝐒𝐿, as if waiting for 𝐒𝐿 to make fun of him or something. Hi, 𝐴𝐻𝐿-san, can I join you? 𝐒𝐿 asks nervously. 𝐴𝐻𝐿 stares at him for a long moment before huffing and looking away with a shrug. Not like I can stop you, he grumbles, and oh, he has a really nice voice, low and soothing, with a bit of a hum to it that makes 𝐒𝐿 want to see if he can recreate it. 𝐒𝐿 sits with space between them and notices 𝐴𝐻𝐿 doesn't have any food. Do you want to share? 𝐒𝐿 offers. No thank you, 𝐴𝐻𝐿 huffs, pulling an apple out of his pocket and taking a bite, and 𝐒𝐿 nods, taking a bite of his own food. They don't see one of their classmates come up until she's standing over them with a derisive smirk on her face. Oh look, the voice stealer's made a friend. Guess even future villains want friends, she mocks with a laugh before walking off, and 𝐒𝐿 can feel his hands tremble as he stares down at his food, the bite he just took feeling like a lump of lead in his stomach. ♀, when 𝐒𝐿 peeks up at him, is staring at him with a contemplative look on his face. Why did she call you that, voice stealer? He asks curiously, but 𝐒𝐿 doesn't hear any trace of fear in his voice. 𝐒𝐿 sighs, setting his chopsticks aside on his tray that's on his lap. Because of my quirk, 𝐒𝐿 admits softly. I can copy voices, 𝐒𝐿 explains, using the girl's voice that just left them. ♀ blinks in surprise. That's pretty cool, he admits. Why do they call you voice stealer though, he asks. 𝐒� fidgets with his fingers. Because technically I was born without a voice, I'm mute. My vocal cords didn't develop right, and before my quirk came in, I was mute. I can only talk using my quirk and only using other people's voices, 𝐒� admits quietly. Oh, ♀ says softly, and 𝐒� waits for him to get up and walk away. Finally, he speaks up. Can you do mine, he asks. 𝐒� jerks his head up in surprise and sees him grinning. I can do yours, 𝐒� says with ♀'s voice, and frowns because that hum he heard in ♀'s voice isn't there. Is your quirk voice-based? 𝐒� asks in his regular voice. ♀ flinches a bit and then nods. If you respond to a question, I can brainwash you, he admits softly. That's pretty cool too, 𝐒� says with a grin. I think I can hear it in your voice, he admits softly. Like this little hum just in hearing range, 𝐒� explains excitedly, and ♀ blinks in surprise. You're not afraid of me brainwashing you, he asks in shock. You're not afraid of me stealing your voice? Why should I be afraid of you brainwashing me? 𝐒� asks, and pps his head to the side. I happen to think it's an awesome quirk. ♀ looks down with a slight flush on his cheeks, but 𝐒� can see a bit of a smile. Thanks, yours is awesome too, he mutters. My foster dad would just love your quirk. He's got a voice-based quirk too, he adds. Really, that's cool, 𝐒� says excitedly, and they soon get lost in conversation, only interrupted by the bell ringing for the end of lunch. That afternoon, 𝐒� goes home with a smile on his face and a brand new friend's number in his phone. Hitoshi stares ahead blankly as his social worker makes call after call, trying to get him a new placement. This is the 6th foster home in the last year that has sent him back because they feared his quirk. He hadn't even used it. Not once, and they still acted like he was 1 second away from snapping and using it to take control of every person in that house. He hates it. He can hear the frustration creeping into Ashina-san's voice as another potential foster home says no after looking up his file and seeing his quirk and the list of complaints filed against him, despite the fact that none of the complaints had any truth to them. Unfortunately, complaints had to be filed, no matter how right they are, and any potential foster or group home can see them. He wonders if he's going back to the orphanage or if they'll just throw him in one of those detention facilities for people with dangerous quirks. His surprised Ashina hasn't given up on him already, but there's a determined set to her jaw that says she's sunk her teeth in and she's not letting go. He's a little grateful she hasn't given up on him. Sorry Shinso-kun, it'll be a while. Here, take this and go get a drink or something, Ashina says, holding out some bills, and he smiles gratefully. He hadn't even had time to eat breakfast before Ashina had shown up, and he'd left with just a rolling suitcase and duffel bag of all his worldly possessions, which amounted to just clothes for the most part. There's a small cafeteria in the building that is mainly for potential guardians and adopters to use as a bit of neutral ground for first meetings if they want or for staff to grab food from. Hitoshi just aims for the coffee machine and grabs a cup and a blueberry muffin, handing the money over and getting the change back. Hitoshi wanders for a bit, staying in the building, but not really paying attention to where he's going and barely stops in time as he turns a corner and almost runs smack into someone. Hands come up to grab his shoulders to stop him from tipping and Hitoshi mutters out a quiet thanks. "No problem, little listener," a familiar voice says, and Hitoshi snaps his head up so fast he's sure to have whiplash to see President 𝐼𝐶 standing there in his hero costume. "I didn't hurt you, did I?" he asks with concern. No," Hitoshi manages to get out, not sure how to act around one of his favorite heroes. Good, I'd hate to have done that," he says with a laugh and puts a little space between them. "What are you doing all on your lonesome here?" he asks with a grin. Hitoshi doesn't even try to censor his words and says in his most tired voice, "Waiting for someone to take me in only to toss me back in a few months," he says honestly, and 𝐼𝐶 blinks in shock at his candid words. "Well, that doesn't sound good," he murmurs with a frown. Hitoshi shrugs. "Welcome to my life," he mutters and turns to walk away before he can say anything else to make matters worse. He doesn't wait to see if the hero will say anything else, just finds the elevator he'd passed and heads back up to his floor. Ashina is still on the phone and it doesn't look like she's found anyone in the time since he's been gone, so with a sigh, he settles in one of the chairs outside her office and just sips his now lukewarm coffee and breathes through the roiling emotions in his chest with his eyes closed and head resting on the wall behind him. He's not expecting to have someone take the chair next to him and he peeks open an eye to see President 𝐼𝐶 seated beside him, a cup of coffee in his hand and holding out a fresh one to Hitoshi. "How many so far?" he asks as Hitoshi takes the proffered drink with a faint smile. "6 in the last 11 months, Hitoshi mutters, and 𝐼𝐶 winces in sympathy. "I remember that part," he mutters. "You were in the system?" Hitoshi asks curiously. 𝐼𝐶 hums softly. "I was born with my quirk. I deafened my BRH parents and the medical team helping my mother have me. I bounced through a lot of homes after they gave me up before I found one. That stuck. Spent some time in a muzzle too," he adds, knowing eyes taking in the faint scars around Hitoshi's face from too tight leather rubbing the skin raw. "I'm sorry," Hitoshi says softly, and 𝐼𝐶 gives a knowing smile. "I can brainwash people," Hitoshi whispers, "like it will lessen the blow. If they respond to my words, I can take control of them. And so they cast you as guilty and villain before ever giving you a chance," 𝐼𝐶 says sadly, and Hitoshi doesn't know how to take that, someone getting it in one fell swoop and not blaming him for it. Everyone always blames him for people throwing him out, everyone, but Ashina-san, and apparently present in Hitoshi's throat grows tight with a lump and he has to blink a few times to keep the tears at bay, but he's sure 𝐼𝐶 sees it anyways. The hero gives him a moment to collect himself, typing away at his phone that chimes with incoming texts before he smiles big and bright. He types a long string of something into his phone and sends it before standing up. "Well, maybe 7 is your lucky number," 𝐼𝐶 says and walks into Ashina's office. Hitoshi stares in surprise, craning his head to follow 𝐼𝐶's path, and the man closes the door behind him as Ashina looks up in surprise. Hitoshi can see them through the fogged glass somewhat, but he can't hear what they are saying. Finally, after nearly 30 minutes of back and forth between them, Ashina making a few phone calls and typing quickly at her computer, she prints something out and 𝐼𝐶 quickly signs it with a grin. The door finally opens and Hitoshi looks up to see Ashina walking out with 𝐼𝐶, a smile on her face with a hint of relief because she'd been working all morning without any results. Hitoshi glances between the two of them. "Well, Shinso-kun, it would seem we have a new placement for you," she says with a bigger smile, and Hitoshi looks between her and 𝐼𝐶, eyes growing wide. "What?" he gasps out in shock. 𝐼𝐶 just grins brighter. "Yep, little listener. Just got the okay from my husband and you're coming to live with us. We've been working on getting considered for fostering for a while, so it wasn't hard to convince him, so welcome to the family," he says with a wink. "What?" Hitoshi asks again. Present 𝐼𝐶, or Yamada Hisashi as Hitoshi soon learns, is very loud, very blonde and very energetic. He also doesn't seem the least bit afraid of Hitoshi's quirk and in fact asks a few questions about it that Hitoshi has trouble answering because he's had no one to work with aside from a few government-mandated sessions with a quirk counselor to figure it out. He explains that he actually has 3 jobs as a pro hero, a radio host and an English teacher for UA. He's married to his husband 𝐼𝐬𝐽 𝐷𝐿, has been for the last 7 years now. They live in a nice apartment that they share with 3 cats that followed his husband home. All in all, it sounds nice, but Hitoshi's not going to get his hopes up only for them to be dashed. He'd learned that lesson a long time ago, but still, it seems to be one of his better placements and according to Yamada, call me Hisashi, Hitoshi will have his own room which is a nice change. They pull up to the apartment complex that Hisashi lives at, pulling into the parking garage after Hisashi flashes his ID to the security guard there. This is a guarded complex for heroes, Hisashi explains at Hitoshi's curious glance. We'll get you your own ID to get in and out tomorrow, but for now, let's just focus on getting you settled in, yes? He says with a grin and Hitoshi nods. They take the elevator up to the 4th floor, Hisashi insisting on carrying his duffel bag and Hitoshi follows him with his rolling case down the hall to stop before a door with the number 407 on it. Hisashi pulls out a key and unlocks the door before ushering him in ahead of him. Hitoshi looks around as he stands in the foyer and is surprised by how nice it looks. Lots of open space, big picture windows off to the side, a large kitchen he can just make out from his vantage point. He slips off his sneakers, setting them off to the side with the other shoes and finds a pair of slippers already set out for him which is honestly the strangest thing of all. In all the homes he's been in, none had ever done that. He'd never even had his own set, either going barefoot or using guest slippers. They're a dark blue, almost black color. Well, come on, don't be shy. 𝐤𝐻 stepped out to grab a few things since this was a bit sudden, but he should be back soon. So, this is where you'll be living from now on. Kitchen's there. Eat what you want, no need to ask. Living room, dining area, that hall leads to the main bathroom, your room and our room which has its own bathroom. There's a gym on the 2nd floor of the building if you want somewhere to work out and there's a few konbines nearby if you ever want to run for a snack, Hisashi explains quickly. He leads Hitoshi down the hall and opens a door. It's just a guest room right now, but we'll go shopping this weekend to get some things to make it more your room, okay? Hisashi says with a smile and Hitoshi nods, everything feeling a bit surreal right now. Hitoshi sets his rolling suitcase aside, Hisashi setting his duffel bag on the bed and they hear a meow. Looking down, Hitoshi sees a small ragdoll cat come slinking into the room, rubbing along the edge of the doorframe as it blinks bright blue eyes up at them. This is Duchess, Hisashi says, bending to pick up the cat and holds her out to Hitoshi. Duchess sniffs his hand before she butts her head against his hand and he grins. He always did love cats. She's our more easygoing cat. There's a temperamental orange and white cat named 𝐵𝐻𝑠turdy who's probably hiding somewhere. He'll come out when he's ready. It might take a few days for him to acknowledge your existence, Hisashi explains and Hitoshi nods. The 3rd one is a female tuxedo named Fritz. She's a bit of a spaz and she's probably sleeping somewhere in a sunbeam, Hisashi finishes. The front door opens quietly and Duchess jumps down to go investigate. 𝐤𝐻 must be back. Now, he can be a bit intimidating at first, but he's got a soft heart, okay. Hisashi says softly and Hitoshi nods, bracing himself for the worst. He follows Hisashi into the main part of the living room and sees a dark-haired man with his back to them as he toes off his boots while bending to pet Duchess as she winds through his legs. He straightens, a couple of plastic bags in his hands crinkling at the movement and as he turns around, Hitoshi stares because he looks kind of familiar like he's seen his face before, but not like present MICs who is automatically familiar. 𝐤𝐻, thanks for grabbing extra supplies, Hisashi says with a smile, leaning in to press a kiss to his cheek. 𝐿, this is 𝐼𝐬𝐽 𝐷𝐿. 𝐤𝐻, this is 𝐿 Hitoshi, Hisashi introduces. Dark eyes with shadows under them glance over Hitoshi, taking in his thin form and pausing the longest on the faint scars that are visible on his face. Hey kid, he finally greets gruffly, handing off the bags to Hisashi before bending to pick up Duchess who hasn't stopped demanding attention. Cats or dogs, he asks abruptly and Hitoshi blinks. Cats, Hitoshi says automatically and a small smirk crosses his face as Hisashi huffs in amusement. We'll get along fine then. Aizawa says with a nod as he scratches behind Duchess' ears. It finally clicks just where he's seen this man before when he glances past him and can see hanging on a hook by the door is a familiar white, bandage-like scarf and a pair of yellow goggles just peeking out from underneath it. Problem? Aizawa asks with a frown. Hitoshi quickly shakes his head, and oh, just, your Eraserhead, he manages to get out. Dark brows go up. And how do you know that? He asks, sounding more amused than anything else, but with a hint of an edge to his voice. I'm on a few underground hero forums, Hitoshi admits softly. There are a few grainy photos of you on there, but I didn't realize until I saw the scarf and goggles, he admits, rubbing at the back of his neck nervously. Did he F this up already? Aizawa snorts softly, relax, kid. I'm not going to jump you. I'm just surprised is all. I've had pros not recognize me, even in my get-up, he jokes and Hitoshi nods. Glad to see you've got a good head on you, Aizawa says and walks towards the kitchen, letting Duchess slide to the floor to run off. The rest of the day is awkward as Hitoshi tries to come to terms with the fact that not only are two of his favorite heroes married, but that he's now living with them. He meets the other two cats in the apartment, has an awkward dinner where mainly Hisashi speaks, trying to draw Hitoshi into conversation and then goes to bed in a room that's too quiet after years of having to share. He wakes up the next morning with 𝐵𝐵 lying on his chest and glaring down at him. Things ease after a few days of awkwardness. Hitoshi gets his ID to come and go in the apartment complex, and he talks a bit more with both Hisashi and �プ𝐿, the man saying he can call him �㗱𝐿 if he wants. He learns that �㗱𝐿 likes his coffee strong enough to wake the dead while Hisashi drinks tea instead. That Hisashi is very much a morning person, and 𝐴𝐿, like Hitoshi, isn't, though Hitoshi's is more from his insomnia and paranoia from his previous placements. Things settle, and though Hitoshi keeps waiting for the two heroes to get rid of him, neither act like they care one whit about his quirk or even act like they fear it. Hisashi does ask him about schooling and where he would like to go since it's almost time to start his first year of middle school. Hitoshi says he doesn't care. He's bounced around so much in the last few years that he's been to quite a few schools, so Hisashi enrolls him with a nicer school near where they live. It's within walking distance, so that's nice. They take him to buy things to decorate his room, which Hitoshi does a bit reluctantly because there's no point to doing that if he's just going to be leaving in a few months once they get tired of him, but if they want to waste their money, he'll bite. The rest of the month leading up to his first day is spent getting him school supplies, getting his uniforms and just preparing himself for another shitty year of no friends and everyone avoiding talking to him. Hisashi packs him a lunch much to Hitoshi's surprise and offers to walk with him to school, but Hitoshi declines. He's got to get to UA for work with 𝐴𝐿, who apparently also works there, and he doesn't want to make them late. With a reluctant nod, Hisashi sees him off at the door and with a reminder to text them if he needs them. They don't care how inane the reason. Hitoshi nods, not expecting to do so, but indulging the blonde. It goes about how he expects it to with any first day. They all introduce themselves and are forced to tell their quirks, and the moment the words are out of his mouth, he can feel the air shift around him, tension, fear, and stares all centered on him. Hitoshi sits down and ignores the looks and whispers of villain he can just catch. He ignores it all through morning classes until lunch rolls around. Not wanting to deal with people staring, he decides to go eat lunch outside, and as is passing through a hall, a group of upperclassmen, for second years, and a girl he recognizes from his class crowd around him. Hitoshi learned a long time ago that it's pointless to fight them when he's so outnumbered. He ends up stuffed into a janitor's closet that's locked behind him with a muzzle strapped far too tightly around his face and the jeering laughter of the other students as they walk away congratulating each other on capturing the villain. Hitoshi sits in the closest for a while with his arms wrapped around his knees. He's not sure how much time passes before he finally pulls himself out of that hazy place he retreats to when this stuff happens. He pulls out his phone and sees it's already been 2 hours and no one has come to let him out. Pulling up his contacts, he types a text with shaky fingers as his vision swims with tears. "SH, can you come pick me up? SH, please." He honestly doesn't expect a response or for them to say they can't. It's what any other foster parent would have done. Instead he gets a response almost instantly. "Ace, I'm on my way. 20 minutes tops." Hitoshi loses track of time again before a text alert has him looking at his phone. "AS, here." Where are you? Hitoshi types out a response slowly. Janitor's closet, first floor by the cafeteria. He waits and waits until he hears rapid footsteps and the handle of the door jiggles. There's a muttered curse, something clicking against the handle before the lock clicks, and Hitoshi squints at the sudden light to see �プ𝐿 standing there staring at him with wide eyes. A range of emotions Hitoshi can't even begin to decipher passes across his face before he finally seems to get control of himself, eyes softening as he kneels in front of Hitoshi. "Hey kid, easy," he murmurs softly like Hitoshi is some scared, cornered animal. "Is it okay if I touch you?" he asks, holding a hand out, and Hitoshi nods slightly, still hugging his knees. �㗉𝐿 smiles gently, reaching out, and Hitoshi has to keep himself from flinching as �㗉𝐿 reaches for his face, but the man keeps going past to feel along the straps of the muzzle before he curses softly. "I'm going to have to cut this. It might feel a little tight, is that alright?" he asks, and Hitoshi nods. Reaching behind him, 𝐒𝐿 pulls out a knife and gently brings it to Hitoshi's face, fitting the blade under the strap, and with gentle motions, slowly saws through the thick leather strap. It eventually parts, and Hitoshi sighs faintly as the pressure it had been putting on his head releases. 𝐒𝐿 pulls back and gently helps him pull the muzzle off his face with a heavy scowl at the object before he tucks it out of sight. "Are you hurt anywhere else?" he asks softly, and Hitoshi pulls back his sleeve where a bruise is forming where his arm had hit the doorframe as they shoved him in. "Okay, we'll look at it in a bit. You okay to walk?" he asks, and Hitoshi nods silently, unfolding with a grimace as his muscles protest, and 𝐒𝐿 grips his arm gently to keep him steady as he finds his balance. Letting go, 𝐒𝐿 steps back so Hitoshi can step out of the room and into the hall. "Come on, I need to have a long talk with your principal," 𝐒𝐿 says lowly, and Hitoshi eyes the man before following him silently. He sits in one of the office chairs staring at his feet while 𝐒𝐿 talks with Yukimura-san in the other room. Hitoshi can't hear what is said, but every once in a while he hears raised voices. By the time an hour passes, the door finally opens and 𝐒𝐿 storms out angrily, Yukimura-san pale and sweating, nervous eyes glancing around at the other staff watching the scene unfold. "You'll be hearing from my lawyers tomorrow, and we will be pressing charges against the ones who did this and the school," 𝐒𝐿 says scathingly before stopping in front of Hitoshi. The man reins in his anger, letting it out on a long breath before smiling faintly at Hitoshi. "Come on, kid. Let's get out of here. You won't be coming back," he says decisively, and Hitoshi nods silently, following him out of the school and towards where he parked in the visitor parking. They ride in silence, Hitoshi gripping his school bag to his chest as 𝐒𝐿 silently stares ahead as he drives, fingers drumming on the steering wheel. "I'm sorry," Hitoshi whispers, the first words he's said since this whole thing happened. "Why are you sorry?" 𝐒𝐿 asks, dark eyes flicking over to Hitoshi before looking ahead back to the road. "I made you come all the way down here," Hitoshi whispers, hands F&G on his bag nervously. Hitoshi sees the man's hands tighten so 𝐻D on the steering wheel, his knuckles go white and he ducks his head. Slowly, 𝐒𝐿 lets out a long breath on a sigh and eases the car off the road and parks it. He looks at Hitoshi with an unreadable expression. "♯, I'm not mad at you," 𝐒𝐿 says evenly, and Hitoshi looks up at him. "I'm furious, but not at you. What those students did to you, what the school tried to brush off, that was wrong. Not only was it against the law, it was wrong on so many levels. You shouldn't have to live in fear of someone trying to muzzle you every time you speak," 𝐒𝐿 presses on him. "Why do you care?" Hitoshi asks suddenly, completely confused by what is going on. "No one ever cares. They pretend and put on a show, but they never do. Why do you care?" he asks sharply. 𝐒𝐿 doesn't look taken aback by his outburst or annoyed by his sharp words. He looks understanding, like he knows exactly where Hitoshi is coming from. "We care because we've both been there. I know what it's like to be called villain, to be judged by others before they even know me because of my quirk. Hisashi knows what it's like to be silenced and passed from one home to another like some unwanted object. We know, Hitoshi," he says, using his name with a strange emphasis. "We want you to have a place where you can feel safe to speak and not fear you'll be kicked out at the first inconvenience." Hitoshi can't stop the tears that overflow his eyes, wiping quickly at them to try and stop the flow. "Sorry," he whispers again, sniffing, "but they won't stop." "Don't be sorry. "There's nothing to be sorry about for crying," 𝐔𝐬𝐽 says softly, pulling Hitoshi into a hug, and Hitoshi grips his scarf tightly as he cries quietly, 𝐔𝐬𝐽's arms tight around him. He cries for a few minutes before he pulls away, and then they eventually pull back into traffic after 𝐔𝐬𝐽 pulls a pack of tissues out of the glove box and hands them over. The rest of the ride is quiet, but not like before, and they arrive back at the apartment a few minutes later. Hisashi is waiting there, pacing in the living room as they enter, and he straightens as they close the door. Hitoshi is exhausted, physically and emotionally. "What happened?" Hisashi demands quickly, seeing the blooming bruises on Hitoshi's face from the too tight muzzle. "I'll explain in a moment. Why don't you go take a nap? We'll call you when dinner's ready," 𝐔𝐬𝐽 suggests, and Hitoshi nods in agreement, smiling wanly at Hisashi before heading to his room. He lies on his bed, Duchess and Fritz curled up with him and purring. He can't sleep, still too keyed up to do so, and can hear the soft murmurs coming from the kitchen where Hisashi and 𝐔𝐬𝐽 are making an early dinner. He finally does seem to doze a bit, because he starts at a soft knock at his door, and Hisashi pokes his head in with a small smile to say dinner is ready if he's hungry. "Okay," Hitoshi murmurs and disentangles himself from the two cats and sits up, rubbing at his eyes and wincing when he presses a bruise by accident. The table is already set when he stumbles out, Hisashi and 𝐔𝐬𝐽 already sitting when Hitoshi sits in his spot and they serve out the food. "How are you feeling?" Hisashi asks gently, green eyes glancing over his face. He's not looked in a mirror yet, but he's sure the bruising is stark on his pale skin in a familiar pattern he's seen before. "Okay," Hitoshi says wanly after swallowing a bite. "Tired," he admits. "I'm sure," Hisashi agrees with an understanding smile. "You're not going back to that school, so you can sleep in tomorrow. We'll figure out where you will be going, and hopefully it'll only take a few days to get it sorted. We're not angry with you, okay? This is not your fault. We're not going to be kicking you out because of this or anything else. You're here to stay, got it?" Hisashi says forcefully, but with a grin. Hitoshi gives a WN smile and nods, got it. A small part of him hopes this is true. The night goes by quickly after that, and Hitoshi goes to bed early. For once, he sleeps, exhausted by his day, and wakes, not refreshed, but at least glad he doesn't have to go back there, though it just means he has to start over at a new school. Hisashi and 𝐔𝐬𝐽 come home that afternoon to say that they got him into a new school a little further away, Aldera Middle School. They accepted the late transfer, and while he won't be going in just yet, he will in a few days once they get his new uniforms in. Nothing is said about his previous school, but Hitoshi does catch the tail end of a few phone calls to someone about it, so he assumes 𝐔𝐬𝐽 kept good on his promise to bring in lawyers. It's the end of the week, right before the weekend, when Hitoshi goes to his new school, 𝐔𝐬𝐽 accompanying him to the school early to have a talk with his principal and explaining in very clear words what will happen if anything like what happened at Hitoshi's last school happens here. Yagura-san agrees quickly that they have a strict anti-discrimination and bullying policy they uphold and will make sure nothing like that happens here. 𝐔𝐬𝐽 gives him the stink eye for a long moment before nodding and walking Hitoshi out of the office. "You going to be okay, kid?" he asks softly. Hitoshi shrugs, "I guess. Can't be any worse than the last school," he mutters, and 𝐔𝐬𝐽 snorts softly. "Please don't jinx us, problem child," he mutters, but the way he says problem child sounds more like an endearment than a comment on the trouble Hitoshi's already caused. "Anything happens, you call us or text us, okay? We'll be keeping an eye on our phones," he promises, and Hitoshi nods. 𝐔𝐬𝐽 sighs softly and pats his head a little, which is weird, but in a nice way, and Hitoshi ducks his head. "Hopefully, this will be a good day. Try to learn something," he orders, and Hitoshi nods before 𝐔𝐬𝐽 gives one last nod and walks out of the school to head to UA. "♯Shinso-san," a woman speaks up, and he looks over to see one of the principal's assistants waiting for him by the door. "I'll show you to your homeroom," she says with a smile, and he nods. He follows silently behind her, and they soon end up at a room where he can hear the buzzing of voices. She waves for him to wait a moment and then knocks before stepping in briefly. The door opens a few seconds later, and Hitoshi walks into the room. Like usual, the class stares at the new kid, some excited, some curious, some not caring one bit. He can already spot one of the favored kids, a blonde with his feet up on his desk and popping off tiny explosions without anyone telling him off, another golden boy with a perfect heroic quirk. He ignores the class as he monotonously gives his name and begrudgingly tells them what his quirk is while watching as the wave of curiosity fades, eyes becoming guarded, fear entering a few faces. Some still look curious, but he recognizes that form of curious and knows it won't be good for him if they try to get close to him. His head people try to befriend him before just to try and use his quirk for their own gains. He takes the seat he's directed to and spends the rest of class ignoring the stares and whispers around him, focusing ahead on the board and trying to do as 𝐻𝐿 said and learn something, but unfortunately, half of it is lost on him. Lunch finally rolls around and he gratefully slips away from his class. Rather than attempting to eat lunch like last time, Hitoshi just heads straight out of the building to avoid people, an apple and a few snacks tucked into his pockets to tide him over until he can get home. He's honestly expecting to be ignored and left alone for the most part, so when someone walks over and asks to sit with him, he reacts with sarcasm. He recognizes the other boy from his class. He hadn't said a single word in any of their classes, nor had any of the teachers called on him. He's not expecting the vitriol one of their classmates throws not just at him, but at the other boy, Midoriya Izuku he introduced himself as. When he explains what they meant by voice stealer, Hitoshi had been intrigued because here is another person like him labeled villain despite the fact that he's just a ray of sunshine. The boy's grin's nearly as blinding as his ashes. They talk over the course of their lunch and by the time they head back to class Hitoshi has a new number in his phone and possibly a new friend, which he's not had in a long time. The apartment is empty by the time he gets home since UA is much further than his school and they both have stuff they have to do after classes get out. So Hitoshi grabs a snack, pulls out his textbooks to start working on the homework they sent home and sets his phone to the side to listen to some music as he works at the living room table. A half an hour later, his phone dings and he sees a text. Hi Shinso-san. Just wanted to say hi and say if you want to hang out sometime, I wouldn't mind. Only if you want to though. It's fine if you don't. I'm sure you're busy and have other plans as well. Sorry if I'm disturbing you. Hitoshi snorts at how the other boy types how he talks before responding. Sure, though I'll have to talk with my foster parents about hanging out. You're not disturbing me. I'm just working on our math homework which is kicking my butt. Oh, yes. I'm working on English right now. I could help you with the math stuff if you haven't finished. Please. How about we hang out tomorrow afternoon? As far as I'm aware, I've got no plans. Maybe meet up at the burger place by school and grab a bite while we work. They have good fries, so yes. I'll text you later. I've got to help with dinner. Sure. I'll text you a time once I have a better idea of when. Okay. Bye. Hitoshi grins and looks up as the door opens to see 𝐻𝐿 and Hisashi coming in. We're home, they call out. Hey, Hitoshi says from his spot. How was your day? Hisashi asks eagerly as he toes off his shoes, 𝐻𝐿 pulling off his scarf to hang with his goggles on their hook behind him. It was, okay I guess, Hitoshi admits with a shrug. Better than last time. He fidgets with his pencil. I made a friend, he admits quietly. Oh, that awesome. It's always nice to make friends, Hisashi says and 𝐻𝐿 huffs behind Hisashi where the blonde still hasn't moved from the foyer and gently pushes him out of the way. Is it okay if I hang out with him tomorrow and work on homework? He asks quietly. Of course, Hisashi assures him with a grin. If you want, you can bring him over as well, he adds brightly, entirely too eager to meet his new friend. I don't think we're quite on that level yet and he might implode when he realizes just who you are, Hitoshi admits, recalling Midoriya's long ramble on his favorite heroes and quirks. Maybe later though. Hisashi just laughs as 𝐻𝐿 collapses on the couch, BSD appearing from the hall and jumping up on the man to cuddle with his purr rumbling loudly in the room. Alright, well I hope we can meet him soon. Now, I'm going to go take a shower and then we can make dinner, he declares and Hitoshi nods, turning back to his homework. Glad to hear you didn't jinx your day, 𝐻𝐿 murmurs from place on the couch and Hitoshi just snorts and goes back to his homework with a grin. Izuku fidgets nervously as he waits for ♀ to arrive. He'd arrived a bit earlier than they planned to meet up, too nervous to wait around, and his mother had shooed him off after he'd started to pace so she could fold laundry in peace. Now, it's a few minutes to 1 and every time someone comes near, he perks up hoping it's ♀♀ before deflating and worrying his lip, mind whispering that he's not going to come because of course he would realize how worthless 𝐒𝐿 is and not want to be friends and… Yo, ♀♀ says behind 𝐒𝐿 and the boy yelps in surprise, jerking around to see ♀♀ in jeans and a t-shirt with a light jacket thrown over it. Sorry, didn't mean to startle you, he adds sheepishly. It's fine. 𝐒𝐿 stammers out, trying to get his heart rate back under control as he flushes in embarrassment even while he smiles so big it hurts his cheeks because ♀♀ actually came. He didn't stand him up and he really wants to be here. I was just lost in though is all. 𝐒𝐿 waves it off and ♀♀ nods before opening the door before gesturing 𝐒𝐿 to go in first. They grab some food before finding a seat and pulling out textbooks and notebooks. So, if you do this, 𝐒𝐿 says pointing from one formula to another, and substitute this for X, you'll find the solution, 𝐒𝐿 explains and ♀♀ frowns as he scs noisily at his soda. Why did they have to add letters, he mutters and 𝐒𝐿 laughs softly. How are you so good at this already, he demands with a frown, but it's not really angry. I read ahead a lot in our books and study a lot since I don't really go out much, 𝐒� admits sadly with a shrug. Plus, my mom's a whiz at math so she helps out a lot too. I still think they added letters just to mess with us, ♀♀ says, but attempts the next practice problem with a frown as he slowly works through the equation. He finally finishes and pulls back to turn the workbook towards 𝐒𝐿. Well teach, do I pass, he asks with a grin. 𝐒𝐿 snorts, but looks over the problem and grins with a thumbs up when it's correct. If this is how the start of our first year is going, I dread the next 2 years, ♀♀ mutters, standing up to go refill his drink, motioning for 𝐒𝐿 to refill his too. Thanks, 𝐒𝐿 murmurs and glances around to people watch as he waits for ♀♀ to get back. ♀♀ comes back looking at his phone while precariously holding the 2 cups of soda and rolls his eyes with a snort before tucking his phone away to hand 𝐒�l's back. My foster dad's a huge dork, he mutters as he retakes his seat. Is he one with the voice quirk or the one who likes cats? 𝐒�l asks quietly after he takes a sip. Loud and blonde, ♀♀ mutters, but there's a small smile hidden in the corner of his mouth. I swear, he was more excited than me that I made a friend, he admits and 𝐒�l laughs softly. My mom was excited too. She was making plans last I saw and I should warn you, she will feed you, 𝐒�l warns with a shrug. I take it you haven't had any friends in a long time either. Heh, ♀♀ says with a wry twist to his mouth. 𝐒�l shrugs, fiddling with the straw wrapper on the table. My last friend turned into one of my worst bullies, so you can say probably, 𝐒�l admits softly. Not that we were really friends I guess, but we grew up together so we got thrown together a lot since our moms are friends and I guess I just hoped he was. Demon, that 𝐒𝐿, ♀♀ says with a wince. A lot of people I knew stopped talking to me when my quirk came in, including my BRTH parents. After a few months, they gave me up, ♀♀ admits tiredly, looking away. No one wants to be friends with someone they're afraid will brainwash them. I'm not afraid of you, 𝐒�l says with a small smile and ♀♀ smiles back. Now, we should get back to math, 𝐒�l says in their math teacher's voice and ♀♀ snorts softly before nodding. Hitoshi knocks nervously on the door and waits, palms sweating as he hears the sound of steps approaching. This is his first time going over to a friend's place and he's not sure what to expect. The woman that opens the door smiles encouragingly though. You must be ♀♀san. Please, come in. 𝐒�l stepped out to grab some snacks, she says and Hitoshi nods with a smile, stepping in. Thank you for allowing me into your home. I'm ♀♀ Hitoshi, he greets with a small bow. My Doria 𝐒𝐭 and I'm glad to meet you. I was so happy when 𝐒�l said he made a new friend, 𝐒𝐭 says with a smile just as bright as her son's. Please, take your shoes off. There are slippers already set out. Would you like something to drink? Eat? She asks. I'm okay. Maybe later, Hitoshi says awkwardly and 𝐒𝐿 nods, directing Hitoshi to the living area. So ♀♀san, have you lived in the area long? She asks conversationally. Hitoshi shakes his head. I recently moved in with my current foster parents who live in the area, he explains. Oh, well, I hope they are treating you well. I hear it can be hard for children in the foster system, 𝐭𝐻𝐿 says awkwardly and Hitoshi nods. They're honestly some of the best guardians I've ever had, he admits with an awkward chuckle. The door opens and they both give silent sighs of relief as it breaks the awkward silence as Midoriya calls out, "I'm back." "Izuku, your friend is here," 𝐭𝐻𝐿 calls out and a yelp sounds out followed by a thump as Izuku must have tripped in his haste to get out of his shoes. "Shinso-kun, hi," Midoriya says barreling down the hall and sliding on his socks a bit. I got some snacks," he says, holding up the plastic bag. "Why don't you boys go to your room and I'll make some lunch for us later," 𝐭𝐻𝐿 says and Midoriya nods. "Thanks Mom," he calls out and Hitoshi bows a bit to 𝐭𝐻𝐿 before hastily following behind Midoriya into his room and stares in shock at the shrine of hero stuff that clutters his room. So this is my room," Izuku says awkwardly, shifting on his feet. "I knew you were a fanboy, but I didn't realize how much," Hitoshi says quietly as he looks around. About 70% of the room is All Might stuff alone, the man's smiling face bearing down on him disturbingly from multiple angles. The other 30% are various heroes, present MIC, the Wild Pussycats, Gang Orca, Kamu Woods, Hawks, Mako, Best Jeanist, and some Hitoshis never seen that look like they might be from other countries. Yeah, I guess," Midoriya says, fidgeting with his fingers and flushing a bit. Hitoshi also notices a small section of what appears to be underground heroes because they're mainly just grainy photos and fan drawings of the heroes that people have taken or seen. "You like underground heroics too?" Hitoshi asks, motioning towards the section. Izuku nods eagerly. "I like all heroics honestly, but underground heroes are some of my favorites, though I wish they had official merch to collect, but you know, secret identities and all," he says with a shrug. "Are you on any of the forums?" Hitoshi asks eagerly and Midoriya nods with a grin, quickly diving for his computer to bring up the sites he's on and they quickly lose time talking about heroes and the various sites they're on, which apparently they're both on a few of the same sites before it eventually comes out that they both want to be heroes. "You want to be a hero too?" Hitoshi asks, excited by the confession Midoriya lets out. Well, yeah, though I don't know if I can or not," Midoriya admits with a shrug, fidgeting with a pen in his hand. "I mean, all I can do is copy voices and stuff and I like to analyze quirks and such." He motions to a shelf by his desk with notebooks lined up neatly in it. "Even if people say it's creepy and well, I'm sure it takes a lot of hard work too," Izuku says with a sigh like he's resigned himself to not going after his dream before it's even started. "Well, what about me? All I can do is brainwash people and they have to talk back to me first. So it's not like that'll be easy, you know, but I'm still going to try. I want to go to UA and I know for a fact that they have multiple ways to get into their heroics department, not just through the entrance exam," Hitoshi adds and Izuku perks up a bit at that. "Really?" Midoriya asks, a bit of hope showing in his eyes. "Well, it won't be easy either way, but we've still got to try, right? Show everyone what us future villains are made of," Hitoshi says with a sharp grin and Midoriya nods eagerly. He glances down at his hands before looking up. Would you like me to help you analyze your quirk?" he asks nervously. "What?" Hitoshi asks, taken aback. "Like break it down and figure out how exactly it works and different ways you can use it and such. Maybe run some experiments on each other," Midoriya explains hastily, waving his hands a bit. "Only if you want to though," he adds. "Are you sure?" Hitoshi asks, feeling his palms sweat in nervousness. "Of course," Midoriya says excitedly. "The best way to figure out how your quirk works is to use it and experiment with it," he says excitedly. "I did a lot of experimenting when I was younger to see how to use my quirk. Thankfully mine didn't need a second person, but I don't mind being your experiment buddy in this," Midoriya says with a nod. "Are you sure?" Hitoshi asks again and Midoriya nods excitedly, already pulling a notebook from a stack of ones that look unused and quickly writes Hitoshi's name on the first page with his pen. "I'm ready, so explain what you know so far," Midoriya orders and Hitoshi does so, what little there is that he learned from his few quirk counseling sessions. "Okay, 2 triggers, verbal, brainwashing, can be broken by pain, but we're unsure how much is required to do so," Midoriya reads off, though his notes look a lot longer than what Hitoshi said. Cool, so first step is me experiencing how it works, Midoriya says. What? Hitoshi says nervously. Don't worry. I trust you not to hurt me, Midoriya says with a grin. Just have me do, I don't know, jumping jacks or something easy for now, he says, and Hitoshi nods nervously. Alright, when you're ready, Midoriya says excitedly, staring eagerly at him. Izuku is nearly humming with excitement after ♀agrees to come over for the day. It's been a month since they first met. He's not had a friend over in forever, and he and his mom go a bit overboard at the idea. Eventually, clearer minds prevail and he convinces his mom not to go too far. He doesn't want to scare ♀away, but still, he's excited. He decides to make a quick run to grab some snacks before ♀ gets there and runs the whole way to the konbini in the hopes of getting back before ♀ arrives, but it's in vain when his mother tells him ♀'s already there. They quickly retreat to his room, and other than a comment and a raised brow at the shine his room is to various heroes, ♀ doesn't seem to mind, and in fact, they eagerly get to talking about underground heroes and are even on many of the same sites, Izuku sending friend requests to ♀'s username. It eventually gets around to their dreams about being heroes and from there about their quirks, and before Izuku realizes it, he's got a notebook out and he's learning everything ♀ knows about his quirk. He waits expectantly for ♀ to use his quirk. He can still hear that hum in his voice when he talks that's just in the range of his hearing. Oh okay, are you ready? ♀ asks, and that hum is suddenly much louder and Izuku can feel it almost, like a tickle in his inner ear. Grinning, Izuku nods and says, yes, then waits for something to happen. Only nothing does and ♀ looks confused. Did I do something wrong? Izuku asks quickly. Maybe he should have said more. No, it should have worked, ♀ says. You responded and I should have taken control, he explains. Izuku frowns, recalling that hum and how much more pronounced it had been, which means that it is part of ♀'s quirk and the increase meant he was actively using it. So why didn't it work? Unless… Oh, Izuku murmurs with a faint grimace. What? ♀ asks quickly. Maybe I'm not the best test subject for this after all, Izuku admits softly. You need someone to physically speak to you in order for it to connect, and well, I technically can't, Izuku reminds him. I speak through my quirk, so there's nothing to trigger the second part of your quirk. Oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense, ♀ says with a frown. Izuku frowns though because there's something about this nagging at him. I think it might be more than just them responding though, Izuku admits, and ♀ looks up in surprise. I can hear your quirk. It's like this hum and it got louder when you used it, but I also sort of felt it, I guess. Like it was trying to latch on here, he presses his throat, but also here, he touches his ear. The inner ear is more closely connected to the brain than our vocal cords are. I think when you use your quirk, you release that hum like a low-frequency sound wave which most people can't hear technically, but their ears and mind can still feel it. So when they speak, they are acknowledging that hum and it allows a connection to form between you and them. Plus, they have to be talking to you, like they're acknowledging your words in some way. So even if you're not trying to catch a person, if they respond, you could potentially grab them too. Maybe even multiple people, though I'm not sure how much of a strain that would be. That's a lot, ♀ says in shock at Izuku's word vomit. I never realized how much more there is to it, he admits. Quirks are a lot more complex than people realize, Izuku says eagerly. A lot of the straightforward quirks are actually very complex, but because most people don't notice the small bits happening, they don't think they're there. I like figuring these bits out, you know. Like how when my quirk first came in, it was just assumed that I could only copy voices, but over time I realized that it's any sounds and that I have an eidetic memory for sounds, Izuku explains quickly. Eidetic memory? ♀ asks. I never forget a sound, Izuku explains. It's how I remember voices and sounds. I don't copy sounds with my quirk and then just forget them when I stop using my quirk. I hear them, memorize the various frequencies that come together to create that sound, and recreate them with my quirk. My quirk is like an artificial vocal cord for me, only with a range that far surpasses normal vocal cords. Wow, ♀ mutters. So you could overhear an entire conversation and recreate it from memory. So if someone confesses to you, you could recreate that confession word for word, 𝐶𝐻 says. Yeah, I guess you could say I'm a glorified recording device, 𝐒𝐿 says with a nod. No, but think about it. You wouldn't even need to have a recording device on you, you are one. So if say you go undercover, they'd never find it on you, 𝐶𝐻 explains, and 𝐒𝐿's eyes go wide. And I can constantly change my voice so they never know who I am, 𝐒𝐿 says excitedly. You'd be able to do a lot with your quirk, 𝐶𝐻 says with a grin. Except pass UA's entrance exam, 𝐒𝐿 says quietly, and the mood drops. All the cool tricks in the world won't help me beat a bunch of robots, 𝐒𝐿 mutters. Yeah, that too, 𝐶𝐻 admits with a huff. Well, I've got a plan for that. Like I said before, there's more than one way to get into the heroics program. If we can't get in through the entrance exam, then we use the sports festival. If you do really well in the festival, like third round well, it might be enough for one of the teachers to sponsor you to train and transfer into the heroics course, 𝐶𝐻 explains. So basically, we have a backup plan, 𝐒𝐿 says, and 𝐶𝐻 nods. We train for the entrance exam, and if that doesn't work, we go with plan B. The only thing we have to do is make sure we do good enough to get into at least the Gen Ed course, 𝐶𝐻 adds. Okay, we have a plan, so now to figure out the in-between of that plan. I don't know about you, but I'm not sure how exactly we would need to train to even be ready for it, 𝐒𝐿 admits. I'll talk to my foster dads. They know a thing or two about training, 𝐶𝐻 says, and 𝐒𝐿 nods. A knock at the door breaks their strategizing. Boys, lunch is ready if you're hungry, 𝐒�l's mother calls into the room. Coming, thanks mom, 𝐒�l says, and she walks off. Alright, we'll pick this up later, 𝐒�l says, and 𝐶𝐻 nods before following him out of the room. 𝐒�l wants to groan so badly when they come out to see the spread of food across the table. He can already tell his mother restrained herself from cooking even more food for lunch, but it's already far more than he and probably 𝐻𝐻 were expecting. 𝐒𝐿 sends a look to the wide-eyed teen as if to say, "What did I tell you?" before taking his seat next to 𝐻𝐻. Thanks mom, it looks delicious. You didn't need to make so much, 𝐒𝐿 chides gently. Nonsense, you're both growing boys. And if 𝐻𝐻-san wants, he can take some home to his family, 𝐒𝐿 waves off with a smile. It looks delicious, Midoriya-san, 𝐻𝐻 says, and 𝐒𝐿 snorts softly. 𝐻𝐻 kicks his ankle in retaliation as he accepts the plate of food from 𝐿𝐿. I'll definitely take some home. Hitoshi glares ahead as 𝐿𝐿 drives them away from his new dentist. His jaw aches something fierce after almost an hour in that torture chair. Hurting? 𝐿𝐿 asks mildly, keeping his eyes on the road as he drives. I think that hygienist was trying to prove a point with those torture implements, Hitoshi mutters. Would that point perhaps be to brush and floss more? 𝐿𝐿 asks without any inflection, though Hitoshi is sure the man is laughing at him and his pain. Yeah, it's gang up on Hitoshi Day, he mutters and winces as his gums throb again. Your friend's still coming over? 𝐿𝐿 asks as they turn onto the street their apartment is on. Yeah. I'm gonna meet him in a bit outside of school and walk him here, Hitoshi explains. You know, I could just pick him up, 𝐿𝐿 offers with a glance and an arched brow. No, I need to brace myself for the implosion to come, Hitoshi says with a laugh. You keep saying that, 𝐿𝐿 says. If you could see his bedroom, you would understand, Hitoshi says as they pull into the parking garage, 𝐿𝐿 flashing his ID before being let in, and they find their parking spot. I'll try and keep Hisashi from going too far, 𝐿𝐿 offers as they get out, and Hitoshi snorts. I look forward to seeing you try, but thanks for the offer, Hitoshi says with a nod as they get into the elevator to go up. It's been a few months now since he was taken in by Hisashi and 𝐿𝐿, and he's started to believe a bit that they aren't going to just chuck him at the drop of a hat, but he's still a little cautious around them. He likes them a lot, and he'd hate to become attached only for it to blow up in his face later. As they open the door, they can hear music playing from the kitchen and Hisashi humming along to it. We're back, 𝐿𝐿 calls out. Hey, just finishing up some dishes, Hisashi calls out. Is he still coming? Hisashi asks, poking his head out of the kitchen as they take their shoes off. Yes, he's still coming. I'm gonna head out in a bit to grab him, Hitoshi says with a huff. Okay. I made some snacks for you too if you get hungry. How was the dentist? Hisashi asks. I don't want to talk about it, Hitoshi mutters darkly and Hisashi sends Shouter a look. Cavity, he explains with a shrug. We'll schedule it for later. You need to brush and floss more, Hisashi reminds Hitoshi. Thank you, the lady with the torture implements already made her case, Hitoshi calls out as he heads for the bathroom to grab some pain meds and ignores the laugh from Hisashi. 20 minutes later, Hitoshi swings through the kitchen to grab a bottle of water before heading out to grab Izuku, who he'd left at school to leave early for his appointment, and stares at the snacks Hisashi made. How much do you plan on us eating? He asks incredulously. Well, you can never be too sure and we can always snack on the leftovers, Hisashi says with a sunny grin. Oh lord, you're as bad as Midoriya's mom, Hitoshi groans. That woman has the right sense and I still plan on getting her quiche recipe one way or another, Hisashi says with a pointed look at Hitoshi as he emerges with his bottle of water. Well, you can ask Midoriya to pass on the message to his mom. I'm sure she'd love to swap recipes, Hitoshi says, aiming to pull on his sneakers. I'll be back, he calls out and steps out before they can say anything else. Hitoshi takes the elevator down to the lobby and waves to the security guard there before stepping out and falling into a light jog. School let out a few minutes ago and he's sure Midoriya is waiting for him. He's breathing a bit and slightly winded by the time he reaches the front of the school and sees Midoriya fidgeting and waiting beside the front gate, checking his phone as he waits. Hey, Hitoshi calls and Midoriya jumps a bit in surprise before looking his way with a grin. Hitoshi stares in surprise at the stark white bandage peeking out from under Midoriya's jacket collar that wasn't there when Hitoshi left him a few hours before. What happened? He demands, walking over to look closer at it. As he gets nearer, he can smell the faint scent of burned fabric and sees a patch of his jacket it's singed. Ah, it's nothing, Midoriya says with a wave of his hands nervously. Midoriya, I was gone 2 hours. How did you get hurt in 2 hours that would require bandages? Hitoshi demands. Apparently I was existing too loudly in Kaken's space and he got mad, Midoriya says with a shrug. It's fine. I already cleaned it and patched it up. It's just a small burn. I don't think he meant for it to be that bad, he says quickly. That thing, but again, he grumbles. This isn't the first time he's seen Bakugo push around Midoriya and hurt him, but it's the first time he's seen evidence from what was obviously him using his quirk. You should tell someone, Hitoshi says. No, it's fine, Midoriya says quickly. Besides, Kaken wants to be a hero and I know he can be a good one. A mark on his record would look bad, he murmurs, looking down at his hands. A hero doesn't hurt people, Hitoshi says vehemently with a frown. He nothing, but a bully, and you defending him won't help him be a hero. It'll just reinforce him being a bully, Hitoshi adds. I know, Midoriya admits with a shrug. But whose word will they take, mine or his? He asks, and Hitoshi stills at the reminder that Bakugo is the golden boy of the school. I'm fine. This honestly isn't the worst he's done. That doesn't make it right or better, Hitoshi mutters, and Midoriya shrugs, but smiles anyway. Well, come on, Hitoshi says, letting it go for now. Hitoshi motions for Midoriya to follow and he does with a bounce in his step, eager to meet Hitoshi's foster dads. When they get to apartment building he whistles. Wow, you live here? He asks. Yep, Hitoshi nods and gets him inside the lobby. They stop to get him signed in at the guard post and then take the elevator up. There's a lot of security here, Midoriya comments. I know, Hitoshi says, not falling for the bait. This will be a surprise and he's going to watch his friend implode. He's kind of been looking forward to this for a while. He's a bit of an but who isn't? Hitoshi unlocks the door and ushers him inside. We're here, he calls out as he shuts the door. There's already a pair of guest slippers set aside. Shouter leans back from where he's most likely grading papers. Welcome back. Nice to meet you, Aizawa Shouter, he adds with a nod to Midoriya. Hello, he stammers out with a slight bow. Thank you for inviting me into your home, Aizawa-san, he adds. I'm coming, don't start without me, Hisashi calls out, and Hitoshi watches raptly as Midoriya registers the voice and then freezes, eyes going a bit wide, and flicks his eyes to Hitoshi, who tries to keep his expression blank. Hisashi comes into the room from the hall and grins brightly. Hello, you must be Midoriya Izuku, Hitoshi's friend. It's very nice to meet you. I'm Yamada Hisashi, Hisashi greets. Hitoshi silently counts backwards from 5 before Izuku finally unfreezes from shock and WHBs around to glare at Hitoshi. Why didn't you tell me your foster dad was present? He hisses, voice shaking a bit with anxiety. Surprise, Hitoshi says with a grin, and Izuku lets out a faint whine as he tries to process that he's meeting one of his favorite heroes in person. Everything okay? Hisashi asks softly. Hang on, he's still imploding, Hitoshi says with a grin. Finally Midoriya's eyes go wide as he realizes he hasn't actually responded to Hisashi's words. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. Hi, it's nice to meet you. Yes, I'm Midoriya Izuku. Midoriya gets out bowing quickly as a flush rises up his neck and cheeks. It's okay, little listener, Hisashi says with a grin and a wave of his hand. I'm glad Hitoshi wanted to bring his friend over. Come on in. Thank you, Midoriya stammers out and Hitoshi laughs before cursing as a sharp heel impacts his shin. Totally worth it. Hisashi leads them to the living area where 𝐬𝐽 is indeed grading what looks like essays, red pen set aside for the moment. Sorry, about just now. You're one of my favorite heroes, Midoriya admits. It was a bit of a shock, he adds with a look at Hitoshi. No problem, little listener. Always glad to meet a fan, and I'm sure Hitoshi meant for it to be a shock judging by the smirk, Hisashi says with a look, and Hitoshi shrugs. I'm surprised you recognized me out of costume though. Most people don't, Hisashi says with an intrigued look. What? Oh, no, I recognized your voice, Midoriya explains with a smile. I have a good memory for voices and I listen to your radio show all the time, Midoriya explains. I thought you called it an eidetic memory, Hitoshi pipes up, knowing Midoriya is trying to downplay his quirk. Eidetic? 𝐬𝐽 asks in surprise. Just with sounds, Midoriya explains quickly. It's part of my quirk, he adds. Oh, yes, Hitoshi did say you had a sound-based quirk too, Hisashi says with a bright smile and looks to 𝐬𝐽. Looks like you're the odd man out, 𝐬𝐽, he jokes, and 𝐬𝐽 shrugs. If you don't mind me asking, what is your quirk? I'm always excited to meet fellow sound quirks. Midoriya flushes and nods. It's called voice box, he says quietly, fidgeting with his fingers. I was born mute, so I actually speak through my quirk, thus the name, Midoriya explains. I can copy voices and sounds and use them to speak. Hisashi and 𝐬𝐽 are silent for a moment before Hisashi finally speaks. Thank you for sharing that with us. I'm sure it's not easy to admit that around new people, he says, and Midoriya flushes even redder. I'll share a secret with you, Hisashi says with a wink and reaches for his ear to pull off his hearing aid. I'm partially deaf. It happened when I was really young because of my quirk. Most people don't know about it though. He slips the aid back in. Oh, Midoriya says with wide eyes, and Hitoshi can already see his brain going to town. That would make sense. Your quirk adapted your vocal cords so they aren't hurt by your quirk, but not your ears. Your voice has a bit of a hum too, but it's different, he starts to mutter. Hisashi blinks and looks to Hitoshi. He likes to analyze quirks, Hitoshi explains. What was that about a hum? 𝐬𝐽 asks, breaking through Midoriya's mutters. What, he asks before flushing as he realizes he wasn't paying attention. You said something about a hum, 𝐬𝐽 says patiently. Oh, yes, well Hitoshi has it too. It's part of his quirk since it requires his voice. I think it's some sort of low-frequency hum he emits to make the connection with people he's trying to brainwash. Yamada-san has it too, but it sounds different, maybe a different frequency, I'm not sure. It fluctuates too, but I guess since his quirk requires a broader range to work, so would the hum, Midoriya explains. I wonder if my quirk has a hum or if it doesn't because it's technically an emitter quirk and not a true vocal quirk, Midoriya says with a frown. Welcome to my world, Hitoshi says with a grin, and Hisashi laughs. You've quite the mind on you, little listener. I take it your quirk allows you to hear a broader range of frequencies too, Hisashi asks. Midoriya nods. Oh, yes, though I've not been able to test how high or low I can hear. I tried to recreate Hitoshi's hum a few times, but I think since it's a quirk-based sound and not naturally made, I can't, Midoriya adds. Or at least that's my running theory currently. He's been helping me figure out my quirk a bit, Hitoshi admits with a shrug. Though apparently his quirk doesn't count as his voice, so I can't actually brainwash him, he adds with a bit of a pout. Midoriya nods eagerly, in his element. We tried a few times. I could feel it trying to connect, but just nothing without the second trigger, he explains. So you can copy any sound? 𝐬𝐽 asks, sounding intrigued. I can copy any sound, even if I've only heard it once, Midoriya says using 𝐬𝐽's voice, and the man blinks in surprise before a bit of a smirk crosses his face. But I try not to use people's voices unless I have their permission. My voice, as far as I know, doesn't actually exist. It's a bunch of voices I liked and meshed together to create a new one so I could have my own voice without using someone else's, Midoriya explains, meshing his fingers together to demonstrate. Clever thinking, 𝐬𝐽 says with a nod of approval, and Midoriya smiles a bit at the praise. He jumps in surprise as Duchess appears and jumps on his lap, demanding attention. Oh, hi kitty cat, Midoriya says with a smile, petting the feline. Duchess meows at him and Midoriya mimics her meow back, and the cat's ears perk up a bit. Alright, we'll let you two get to whatever it was you were planning to do. I'll bring the snacks out later, Hisashi announces, and Hitoshi nods, standing and dragging Midoriya off the couch, the boy still holding Duchess as she butts her head against his face. Okay, Hitoshi says, and Midoriya waves farewell before Hitoshi drags him to his room to work on their plans for training alongside some homework. Midoriya sits down heavily onto Hitoshi's bed and then shoves his face into Duchess' side to whine softly. You okay? Hitoshi asks quietly. I just talked quirks with one of my favorite heroes, Midoriya says after pulling his face away from Duchess' side, the cat completely unaffected. You did, Hitoshi agrees. I'm going to get you back for this surprise. I about had a heart attack when I heard his voice, Midoriya mutters, petting Duchess like she's the only thing keeping him from flying apart at the seams. I'm sure you will. Now, let's get this figured out, Hitoshi says, and Midoriya sighs, but nods. He pauses and then blinks. I just got why you said you'd ask your foster parents about training, he admits. Yeah, try being fostered by them. I'll tell you later how that came about, Hitoshi offers, and Midoriya nods eagerly. Then he frowns. Wait, you said your both of them know about training. Does that mean Aizawa-san is a hero too? Hitoshi just grins at him. Shinso-kun, please, no more surprises. I don't think I can take any more, Midoriya whines. Alright, he is, though I won't say who. You get to figure it out, Hitoshi says with a laugh as Midoriya sends him a look of despair. He finally figures it out on his way out to head home when he notices the scarf and goggles hanging in the foyer. Needless to say, he has a second implosion as well, and Hitoshi enjoys every moment of it. Hitoshi feels his stomach knot up as he heads out of his room a week later. He and Izuku, the other boy saying it was okay to call him by his given name, have finally ironed out their plans for getting into UA, but now he needs to do his side of the plan, asking 𝐬𝐽 and Hisashi for help in training. Realistically, he knows both would be happy to help him and Izuku, maybe give a few tips on different ways they can start exercising and training. They've still got a few years before the entrance exam, so they have time, but that part of him that's still back in his other homes balks at the idea of trusting them with his dream. He never asked any of his previous placements for any kind of help because he knew they would never give it, or they get angry at him for taking up their time. Old habits die hard, as they say, and Hitoshi has put it off as long as he could, but he made a promise and he won't disappoint his friend. So, gathering his courage, Hitoshi heads to the living room where 𝐬𝐽 is grading. It's Friday, so Hisashi is at the radio station for his show, and it's just the two of them tonight. 𝐬𝐽 not going on patrol on Fridays, so there's always at least one of them home at night with him. Hitoshi sits on the couch and fidgets with the drawstring of his hoodie before he finally essays in a breath before saying, 𝐬𝐽. 𝐬𝐽 hums back as he marks a few spots on the paper before scribbling a grade on it and shifting it aside to the next paper. Would you be able to help me and Izuku with training stuff? Hitoshi finally asks, not looking up from his lap, though he hears the man set his pen down and shift back a bit to look at Hitoshi. Training as in, he asks, though he doesn't sound angry or annoyed, just interested. Well, Izuku and I, we want to go to UA and try and get into the heroics course, But we don't really know how to train to get ready for it, and well, I was wondering if you could give us a few tips. He finally gets out, still not looking up. You want to be heroes? 𝐻𝐸𝐻 asks. Hitoshi nods. Heroics isn't something you just get into casually like a club. It takes a lot of hard work, dedication, and a lot of blood, sweat and tears. It's a serious commitment, he states frankly. We know that, Hitoshi says, head jerking up to look at 𝐻𝐸𝐻, who is watching him with an unreadable expression. We want to help people like us, who get ignored or brushed aside because they'd rather believe other people's words than ours, or who get treated like villains before anyone gives them a chance to prove them otherwise. We want to show that our quirks do not mean villain, Hitoshi says in a rush, heart beating heavily in his ears as he waits for 𝐻𝐸𝐻 to say something. For a long moment, silence hangs between them as 𝐻𝐸𝐻 seems to stare right through him. Then the man smiles, a barely there smile, but it's still there. Very well, I'm sure Hisashi and I can help you figure out an exercise plan, but Midoriya will need to get his mother's permission. I don't want her getting mad at me because she wasn't in the loop, he says pointedly. Yes, of course, Hitoshi says excitedly, jumping up with a grin. I'll let him know, he quickly. He starts to turn and 𝐻𝐸𝐻 calls out, and Hitoshi pauses, looking back at him to see that smile is still there. I think you and Midoriya will make excellent heroes, once we train you up, that is. His smile turns wicked. Hitoshi flushes at the praise and then gulps because he just knows this is going to be a lot of hard work. Thanks, Hitoshi gets out before rushing off to his room to grab his phone so he can text Izuku about the good news. Izuku grins as he gets the confirmation text from Hitoshi, his friend informing him of 𝐻𝐸𝐻's requirement. Sending a quick string of excited words to his friend, Izuku jumps up. His mom is in the other room working on some work she brought home from the firm where she works as a paralegal. When he comes out of his room, he sees her at the table, some of her books opened around her and a few files spread across the table. He sees her water glass is empty and grabs it to refill it for her. Oh, thank you, sweetheart, 𝐭 says with a distracted smile as she pages through a book to look something up. Izuku comes back and sets the glass of cold water down before he grabs a seat across from her and sits down. Mom, Izuku says quietly, and 𝐭 looks up at the tone in his voice. Can I ask you something, he asks. Of course, 𝐭 says and sets aside her pen to give him her full attention. Do you think I could be a hero, he asks quietly. He still remembers that anxious time before his quirk came in and they thought he would be quirkless. The way she had apologized to him when he'd asked this very same question, like she was apologizing for something that wasn't her fault. That he'd been born mute, and at the time, that he'd been born quirkless and she was to blame. He hadn't been quirkless, but it still stuck because he's seen the way quirkless people are treated. Had been there for a few years and it's not nice. He's also experienced what it's like to be called villain and degraded because of his quirk. Izuku silently wonders if anyone is ever truly perfect in society's eyes. And of those few that are seen as perfect, how much expectation is put on their shoulders because of their perfect quirk. He's seen it with 𝐭𝐿. Despite what Hitoshi says, he knows 𝐭𝐿 can be good. He remembers a time when they were younger, before their quirks and running around with his best friend in the world. And then 𝐭𝐿's quirk came in and Izuku's didn't, and suddenly 𝐭𝐿 was perfect for heroics. How he could do no wrong and everyone treated him like he was just better because he could make explosions from his hands. No one ever told him no, he never got in trouble, and anything that might have left a mark on his record got swept aside. He watched how his once nice friend changed into the bully he is today. How can someone change if no one gives them room to grow? How can 𝐭𝐿 be better if everyone says he's perfect? 𝐭 eyes widen a bit in shock, not having expected this line of questioning, and a sad look crosses her face, no doubt remembering the last time he asked her this question. She takes a slow breath before looking back at him. I think, my opinion doesn't matter, dear. If you want to be a hero, then I will support you, but, she says with a tremulous smile, I think you would be the kind of hero I would be proud to call my son, she says, and Izuku feels tears prick his eyes and he quickly blinks them away. Thank you, he whispers with a small grin. I want to try and get into UA and into their heroics course, he explains quickly, and 𝐭 nods. Hitoshi's foster dads know how to train physically for stuff, and Aizawa-san agreed to help us train and stuff, but he said only if I have your permission. So, can I train with Hitoshi? Izuku asks, heart beating quickly in his chest. 𝐭𝐽 frowns, but nods. I don't see why not, but I would like to meet them first so I know them and perhaps get occasional updates on what is teaching you so I know you're not overdoing it. There's such a thing as too much training, 𝐭𝐽 reminds him. Really? Thank you, Mom. I'll let him know and we'll figure out a day so you guys can meet, Izuku says excitedly, rushing around the table to hug her as tight as he can. You're welcome, sweetie, 𝐭𝐽 says with a fond laugh and hugs him back. Izuku presses a kiss to her temple and then rushes off to inform Hitoshi the good news. Neither Hitoshi nor Izuku are actually at the meeting between Izuku's mom and Hitoshi's foster dads. 𝐭𝐽 didn't work that far from UA's campus, so the three had taken a long lunch to meet up nearby while Izuku and Hitoshi are at school, the two sweating anxiously because something could go horribly wrong if they aren't there to mitigate any disasters. Something obviously goes right for once though, because when they both get home, they learn that not only did 𝐭𝐽 like Hisashi and Shouta, but she heartily approved the exercise plan they created for the boys to ensure that not only were they resting enough, but that they weren't pushing themselves too hard, and with a diet plan that both Hisashi and 𝐭𝐽 approve of, along with promises to share recipes between them. So, a week later, Izuku finds himself following Hitoshi from school to his apartment complex where Aizawa will be showing them how to use various exercise equipment and things that can be done outside of a gym to help them train. You have your own full gym here? Izuku asks incredulously as he looks around wide-eyed after Shouta had swiped them into the second-floor gym. The thing takes up nearly the whole second floor of the complex, with the rest sporting a spa-like area for those in need of some relaxation. This is a hero complex and is partially maintained and funded by various agencies. It gives us a place to work out without having to deal with reporters and fans constantly stopping our workout to speak with us, Aizawa explains with a nod towards a few people already using the gym, a woman on a treadmill going at a good clip and a man in the corner near some sparring mats in the middle of punching a punching bag. So what are we starting with? Hitoshi asks, eyeing the equipment with a bit of an apprehensive glance. You, Aizawa says with a bit of a smirk, will be starting on basic stretches and strength-building exercises. They both trade glances with a bit of concern by how the man looks gleeful at the prospect. I can't move my arms, Izuku mutters 2 hours later after they had finished cool-down stretches. Is that good or bad? He asks as he looks down at his trembling limbs. Is it too late to back out? Hitoshi asks from his sprawl on a mat, looking ready to just collapse into unconsciousness. We've barely even started and you're already talking about quitting. Aizawa asks mildly. The man looks as fresh as he did when they started, and he'd done more than they had. No, Hitoshi groans out and forces himself to sit up. That's what I thought, Aizawa says with a pointed look. We'll be doing this twice a week for now, along with your daily runs to build up your stamina. Your mother has a copy of your exercise schedule and she will inform me if you slack or do more than is approved of, he adds with a look at Izuku, and Izuku nods. Why only 2 days? Izuku asks. Because you're just starting out with exercising. You feel this bad after only a few hours working out on simple stuff. Imagine trying to do it more days a week, Aizawa says, and Izuku grimaces. We're starting you out slow to give your body's time to adjust to the new change. As time passes, we'll increase the time you train and the amount of days. You'll still have rest days, of course, but for now, 2 is enough to start off with, Aizawa explains patiently. That sounds reasonable, Izuku says, wiping his brow with a towel he'd brought. Alright, time to clean up our area and then go rest. Are you good to walk home, Midoriya? Aizawa asks Izuku. Yeah, I'll be fine, Izuku says with a grin, and he nods as they get up and start cleaning their area up. Izuku waves farewell and then leaves the apartment complex to go home. His arms ache horribly by the time dinner rolls around, his mother sending him sympathetic looks when he starts to lag through dinner, exhaustion hitting him hard. She sends him to bed early and he crashes hard, but he feels a small seed of accomplishment grow in his chest, day 1 down and many more to go. Where are we going? Hitoshi asks as he follows Shouta down the street towards the more industrial area near where they live. Training, Shouta says with a nod, tossing him something. Hitoshi catches it and he looks down to see something that looks like a wireless earpiece. Put that in, Shouter orders and Hitoshi does, hearing it crackle to life. We're going to be working on some basic parkour exercises. While we work, you're going to try and use your quirk on me. Use whatever you need to try and get me to talk, Shouter says, and Hitoshi swallows nervously, but nods. They've been training for about 10 months now, mainly just building up their strength and stamina, with a bit of self-defense thrown in. This is the first time they've done anything with his quirk. What about Izuku? Hitoshi asks nervously as he fiddles with his earpiece while they walk. Hisashi's got him well in hand. They'll be doing their own training with his quirk and physical training as well. You need the most work with your quirk, he states simply, and Hitoshi hunches his shoulders a bit at the comment. I know, he agrees softly. Despite how much Izuku has helped him understand his quirk and his few attempts to use it on the other team, he still hasn't used it since he moved in with Hisashi and Shouter, longer than that even. The last time he did use it was 2 placements ago when he'd been forced to use it to stop one of his foster siblings at the time from hurting him. He'd been kicked out afterwards. It's been ingrained into him to not use it, to not show it, because if he does, he'll be punished. If you're going to become a hero and use your quirk, you need to become comfortable using it, Shouter states simply, understanding without Hitoshi needing to say anything what the problem is. Stopping villains, rescuing civilians, calming people, it has many applications in the field, if you're smart enough to figure them out. I won't lie. There will always be people who will still see it as villainous even if you do become a hero. Some will never be happy with your quirk. Society doesn't work that way, but the ones who matter, they won't care one way or another. A quirk is just a tool and you need to master it just like anything else, Shouter finishes, stopping to look at Hitoshi with a look that brooks no arguments. Okay, Hitoshi says with a nod, clinching his hands into fists. Shouter nods approvingly and continues walking. What are the earpieces for, he asks. Just in case, Shouter says. If you get hurt or we get separated, you can still get in contact with me, Shouter says as they step in front of an area filled with alleys and buildings of various heights. So, let's begin. I'll show you some of the basic things you should know, falling, rolls, hand grips, and then we'll start from there, Shouter says, and Hitoshi nods as the man starts to demonstrate what he'll be teaching. Yamada-san, what are we doing here? Izuku asks as the man pulls his car into what Izuku quickly realizes is his agency. Training, little listener, more specifically, quick training. Yamada explains as they park in the parking garage away from prying eyes. We're going to figure out your ranges for not only your hearing, but your quirk as well, he explains as he leads them towards the building. Since a lot of the heroes who work here have voice or sound-based quirks, we have the equipment needed to test our quirks and train. People greet Yamada as they walk through the agency, giving curious glances to Izuku, but not seeming too surprised by him being with Yamada. The man grins and waves, greeting people by name, be it hero name or civilian name, as he guides Izuku to an elevator and they take it up 2 floors. Exiting into a hall, Yamada guides Izuku a little further along until they come to a double door where he punches in a code and the doors open to show what Izuku realizes is a training room with lots of equipment all across the edges of the room. This room has the best soundproofing known to be out there. It was specially designed to muffle voice training. I can unleash one of my lesser attacks in here and no one would hear it, though I have to be careful because there's a lot of expensive equipment in here, he jokes with a wink. A woman off to the side straightens wearing a white lab coat with a pair of ear protectors around her neck. Shizuka-san, thank you for helping set this all up, Yamada says with a grin. Of course, MIC. It's part of my job here, she waves off with a smile. Izuku can see a strange glow coming from her throat, though it's faint. Midoriya-kun, this is Yamato Shizuka. She's one of our support staff and a doctor in her own right in regards to hearing and vocal quirks, Yamada explains to Izuku. Shizuka-san, this is Midoriya Izuku. I'm helping him figure out the range of his quirk, Yamada explains. It's nice to meet you, Izuku gets out, curious about what they plan to do today. Likewise. Well then, let's get started, Shizuka says with a nod, and Yamada pushes Izuku towards a chair next to a machine set up with a pair of headphones next to it. Take a seat, Midoriya-san, she instructs. Okay, Izuku nods and takes a seat. MIC explained that you are unsure of the range of your hearing since it seems to be tied with your quirk, so first, we'll be starting there. You'll put those headphones on and I'll start playing a series of sounds at various frequencies. You simply need to raise your hand to confirm you can hear it, got it? She asks. I think we did this when I was younger, Izuku says with a frown as he takes the headphones. Many people do get their hearing tested at a young age to make sure they don't have any hearing problems. Did your quirk come in late? She asks. When I was 6. We thought I would be quirkless for a while and then one day it just came in, he explains. I'm technically mute, he adds. I speak using my quirk. Ah, of course. You're not the first person I've worked with who had a similar setup of quirk and disability. It's actually not that uncommon. One person I worked with in the past was born blind, but could see using echolocation as part of their quirk. It's amazing the way the body and quirks can adapt and mutate to help us, she says with a smile as she motions for him to put on the headphones. Alright, get those settled and we'll get started. Izuku does as told and over the next 10 minutes, he proceeds to raise his hand whenever he hears a sound. Finally, she taps his shoulder and he pulls them off. How did I do, he asks. Well, you weren't kidding when you said he might have a broad range, she says with a huff. His hearing as low as 10 Hz and as high as 100 kHz. I didn't want to go any higher in case it might have a damaging effect. Wow, that seems like a lot, Izuku says with a frown. Shizuka nods in agreement. To put it simply, the average person hears a range of 20 Hz at the lowest to 20,000 Hz at the highest, with some fluctuation depending on age and genetic differences. With the introduction of quirks into the world, that range is much broader depending on the person and quirk. We have found that often, people with animal mutation quirks often have heightened senses similar to their animal counterpart. You are able to hear infrasonic sounds or low frequencies below 20 Hz as well as ultrasonic sounds or high frequencies above 20,000 Hz. Oh, Izuku murmurs, a little shocked. He'd never noticed how sensitive his hearing was, but then he can recall many a time hearing a sound and no one else reacting to it. Not bad, little listener, Yamada says, clapping his hand on Izuku's shoulder. Now that we have a range to work with for your hearing, I want to run some tests on your quirk itself, he says and directs Izuku towards an area with some comfortable-looking chairs and a few more devices. The three of them sit as Shizuka starts to set up the equipment. So first, you've already experimented some with it. You say you can copy sounds, correct? Yamada asks and Izuku nods. Well, let's test how accurate your quirk is. We're going to make some sounds at various frequencies and see how spot on you are with them, Yamada explains and Izuku nods. The next 20 minutes goes by with Shizuka recording the frequency of the sounds he emits while Yamada uses a device to create the sounds, both of them wearing ear protection. Good, here, take a break, Yamada says, handing him a bottle of water and Izuku smiles in thanks. He's not used his quirk this much in a while aside from talking. Well, Shizuka-san? Yamada asks. You're pretty spot on for most frequencies. You have some trouble with the lower frequencies and the higher ones, but that may be because you haven't attempted to use them before. With more practice, you could create quite a tool there, she says with a smile. Alright, thank you, Shizuka-san. We'll let you get back to your work and we'll clean up here when we're done, Yamada says and Shizuka nods. Of course. It was nice meeting you, Midoriya-san. Maybe we'll see each other again, she says with a smile as she stands up. Of course, thank you for your help, Izuku says, quickly standing to give her a small bow. Waving him off. Shizuka leaves the training area. Alright, little listener, now comes the training. Now that we know your ranges, Yamada says while rubbing his hands together. How will we train? Izuku asks curiously. Your quirk has a very versatile range. Most voice quirks only stay in the high or low ranges. I myself can't go lower than maybe 18, 19 Hz. My quirk works mainly with ultrasonic sounds as well as the loudness of my voice, creating a concussive force in a cone-shaped range. It's what makes my quirk so devastating, but it also means I have to be careful where I aim it because it affects everyone, enemies, allies, and civilians alike. From the looks of it, your quirk did the opposite of mine. Mine adapted my vocal cords to withstand the abuse, but not my ears. Yours, since you were born mute, instead adapted your ears to be able to withstand and work with your quirk. You're able to hear these extreme highs and lows without it affecting your hearing. So while it doesn't have the punch mine does, it does have a lot more flexibility and accuracy. So, instead of hitting a lot of people in a cone of attack like your quirk, mine is more like a pinpoint attack of a certain area because I can throw my voice and don't need to direct it, Izuku says, getting what Yamada is getting at. Exactly. If you can learn to assess this, you would have a very good attack as a hero. You'll need to be careful of course because you can hurt people with this kind of attack. Some sound frequencies can cause disorientation, physical effects on the body, can affect a person's nervous system, and could even kill someone if you hit someone with, say, a weak heart or some other underlying conditions that can make them susceptible to your attacks, Yamada explains. Oh, like Gang Orca's sonic attack, Izuku says excitedly. He affects their nervous system which makes them unable to move. Precisely, Yamada says with a finger gun at Izuku. We'll work on practicing with that at a later date. Today, Yamada says as he guides Izuku towards a section of the room with training mats, we'll work on using your quirk while moving and not just to talk. Yamada grabs 2 bow staffs set aside and hands one to Izuku. While I teach you how to use these, you're going to practice throwing your voice around without looking where you're throwing it and without moving your mouth. I'll be asking random questions and you'll answer them as we work. This means you need to be aware of your surroundings and what's in them that you can use. We won't worry about that for now, but just keep in mind. Now, ready? Yamada asks, holding up his staff. I'm ready, Izuku says with a nod. Alright, well first we'll start with the correct way to hold the staff and place your feet, Yamada instructs. By the time their first year of middle school ends, Izuku and Hitoshi have learned a lot, though the 2 pros are adamant about not teaching them certain things unless they do get into the heroics course at UA simply because they are things hero students are taught. Still, they celebrate making it through a year without any major events aside from the usual bullying and being ignored by the rest of the school body. Hitoshi also celebrates his longest placement with Hisashi and Shouta. It's a quiet celebration, but it means a lot to him who for the longest time was bouncing from home to home with far too regular a frequency. Their second year goes about the same, though some of the bullying increases, mainly from Bakugo and his cronies. Izuku keeps Hitoshi from starting something with the boy mainly because it wouldn't make a difference. They would be the ones to get in trouble and they don't need any marks on their records to possibly bar them from applying to UA. Plus, Shouta and Hisashi said to only use what they learned in self-defense, and while it might constitute as self-defense, the school wouldn't see it that way. Luckily, Bakugo seems to also be doing what they are doing and training for the exam next year, and thankfully, he leaves them alone for the most part aside from a few brushes with him in the halls and in between classes. Hitoshi still doesn't get why Izuku keeps trying to defend the guy, but he'd rather not upset his best friend because he decided Bakugo needed a face change via a right hook to the nose. Still, despite the bullying and the obvious favoritism by the teachers and staff at Aldera, the last year and a half has been some of his best school years hands down, which is saying something, honestly. Hitoshi glances over at Izuku, who's currently writing something down into one of his many notebooks at his computer desk. Their numbers have exploded since Hitoshi first visited Izuku's room, the boy filling pages and pages with quirk and fight analysis, ideas, and questions about anything and everything that comes his way. Hey, Izuku, Hitoshi calls from his own spot on Izuku's bed as he works on some homework. Izuku hums to show his listening. Have you thought about hero names? Hitoshi asks and watches as Izuku jacks up with wide eyes. Oh my god, so much, Izuku whisper yells. They're keeping their voices down because his mother's on the phone with a client right now about a case. Have you? He asks excitedly. Hitoshi shrugs. Some. Not sure what I want exactly, he admits. What have you come up with? He asks Izuku. Izuku turns his chair to face Hitoshi. Well, I kind of wanted to go with Mockingbird, Izuku admits with a sheepish grin. They're known for being able to copy a wide range of sounds, which gives away my quirk and doesn't, you know. Because everyone hears that I can copy voices and they just don't think anything past that. Oh, I like that, Hitoshi says with a grin. I'm not sure what I want mine to convey. I don't want to be too obvious, you know, because my quirk works best if they don't know how it works, Hitoshi says with a shrug, rubbing the back of his neck. So misdirection, Izuku hums in thought. Have you thought about support gear? Like ways to help you with your quirk? Izuku asks and Hitoshi shakes his head. Well, I had a few ideas, Izuku says, grabbing the notebook labeled with Hitoshi's name and comes to sit next to him. Your quirk only helps if they don't know what it is, but what about if they do? Izuku says and opens to a page near the middle. I thought something similar to my quirk might work. Hitoshi looks to see a few rough sketches of something that would wrap around his throat. I figured an artificial voice box that you can use to copy someone's voice and use in place of your own voice, but still allowing your quirk to go through. Well, you put a lot of thought into this. I hadn't even thought that far ahead. But why is it around the throat? He asks. Well, the vocal cords are in your throat, but also, Izuku pauses. Well, most of my designs for the face were very mask-like and I didn't think you wanted to feel like you were wearing a muzzle again, Izuku explains quietly. Hitoshi had told him about some of his past placements and the reason why he had transferred so suddenly at the start of their first year of middle school. I think I might be okay with something on the face, so long as it's not tight or restrictive. Definitely needs to be breathable and won't rub, Hitoshi admits, rubbing self-consciously at his old scars. But I like the throat design as well. It looks interesting. I'd maybe get both to see what I like better, you know. Or have them for different situations, Hitoshi says and Izuku nods with a grin. What about you? Hitoshi asks. Oh, well, I'm going to get something to amplify my voice so I can throw it further and make it louder if necessary, and something to help me hear further. I can hear a wide range of frequencies, but I'm still limited by things like physical objects blocking the sound waves. I was thinking earpieces that would increase my hearing range. Plus weapons and stuff, can't forget those, Izuku adds excitedly. Shouter says if I get into the heroics course, he'll teach me to use his capture scarf, Hitoshi confesses. What? That's so cool. As if that wasn't incentive enough, Izuku jokes and Hitoshi grins as well. They fall silent for a few moments before Izuku says, I have an idea for your name, he admits. Lay it on me, Hitoshi says and the green-haired boy nods. Well, I was researching on names and well, this one might suit you, especially if you do get the voice changer, Izuku says and writes out the name quickly. The bird is called the lyrebird. It's known to copy sounds, even things like chainsaws and car alarms. I thought a play on the word would be interesting. Because lyre is spelled like the stringed instrument, but I thought you might like it as lyrebird, because you would use other voices to speak to them, sort of lie. It's stupid, you don't have to use it, Izuku says quickly, flushing. Hey, no, Hitoshi says, grabbing Izuku's hand to keep him from scribbling out the name. I like it, Hitoshi says. Lyrebird and mockingbird, it's got a ring to it, Hitoshi says and Izuku smiles faintly at him. The voiceless heroes, Lyrebird and Mockingbird. Get it? Because I wouldn't be using my voice and you're mute, Hitoshi jokes. Izuku can't keep a straight face at his grin. That was horrible, he huffs out, trying to control his snickering. You are not allowed to name anything, Izuku mutters. I try, Hitoshi jokes, sending him a look and they both fall back into laughing. Izuku feels his breath rush out of his chest as he lands on his back and waits for the world to right itself as he tries to catch his breath again. Unimpressed dark eyes stare down at him and Izuku groans. You're enjoying this too much, Izuku manages to get out. Do better and you won't end up like this, Aizawa states simply. Izuku nods and sits up. They've been going for an hour now of Izuku sparring with the pro and mostly ending up flat on his back or pinned on his front by the man. Hitoshi had been dragged off by Yamada to do some voice exercises and sparring at his agency, so Izuku and Aizawa are in the gym at their apartment. Standing, Izuku shakes out his arms and falls back into his ready stance. Aizawa nods once before motioning for Izuku to take the first attack. Rushing, Izuku aims a feint at the man's face. Before ducking under the kick, Aizawa aims at his stomach and tries to sweep his feet out from under him, only for the pro to jump over his sweeping leg, twist midair and bring his free leg down in a roundhouse kick to the back of Izuku's shoulders that has him slamming to the mats once again. Better, but still not good enough, Aizawa says with a huff. He's at least showing signs of getting tired. It used to be he always looked fresh from the shower whenever he trained with Izuku and Hitoshi. Remember to focus on the torso and hips. They'll tell you more about what your opponent will do than their arms and legs will, Aizawa reminds him. Yes, sir. Izuku nods while pushing himself up with a wince. Aizawa had held back some of the force from that kick, but he knows there's going to be a bruise there tomorrow. Standing, he shakes out his arms again and gets back into stance. I'm ready. Aizawa just smirks and this time takes the first attack, Izuku yelping and ducking under the blow. Again, Hisashi says as Hitoshi grimaces and swallows before running through the voice exercises Hisashi has been drilling him in for a while now. He finishes and Hisashi nods, tossing him a bottle of water. Take a break, Hisashi orders and Hitoshi sighs in relief. He never realized how much a throat could hurt from so much talking, or in this case, singing. Why are we doing this again? He asks after swallowing a few mouthfuls. Because you can't just rely on your quirk or your support gear, Hisashi states simply. Like training your muscles to fight, we're training your throat as well. Learning how to project your voice, how to alter it, how to convey more with a few words than a whole paragraph, it can make or break a hero in some situations. There will be times, especially for underground heroics, where you can't have your support gear or you'll be made. Learning to do what your support gear does will help in the long run. Also, training your vocal cords will let you use your quirk easier and for longer if you have to repeatedly use it in a fight. Throat strain can be bad for vocal-based quirks and can even hurt you in the long run, Hisashi explains. Have you ever hurt your throat? Hitoshi asks curiously, rolling the bottle between his hands. A few times from overusing my quirk. It might protect my vocal cords from being shredded, but it can't protect me from everything. Repeated injuries to the same area can cause future problems, so it's important to warm up. Like doing stretches before exercises, warming up your throat will help you too, Hisashi explains with a grin. That makes sense, Hitoshi says with a nod. Ready to go again? Hisashi asks with a grin that is somewhat reminiscent of Shouters, and Hitoshi swallows, but nods. All right, from the top. Let's see if we can make a songbird of you yet, Hisashi says, and Hitoshi opens his mouth to do as told. Did you get it? Hitoshi asks as soon as Izuku answers the phone. I haven't even gotten home yet, geez, Izuku mutters as he juggles his bag, the phone between his shoulder and ear, and his keys to get into the apartment. Well, hurry up, I need to know, Hitoshi grumbles. Forgive me. Some of us live further away from school than others, Izuku huffs out as he unlocks the door and steps inside, closing it after him. I'm home, Izuku calls out as he toes off his shoes. Hi dear, I just got in, Inko calls out from the kitchen, peeking around the door frame to see him in the entrance on the phone. Hello Hitoshi-kun, she adds louder. Hi, Midoriya-san, Hitoshi calls over the phone just loud enough for his mom to hear. Did anything come in the mail, Mom? Izuku asks as he sets his bag aside for the moment to aim for the kitchen. Oh, yes, something from UA came, dear, Inko says with a wave towards the kitchen table, and Izuku jumps forward to grab it off the table, scrabbling to rip it open without damaging the papers inside while still keeping the phone pressed between his ear and shoulder. Izuku quickly pulls the papers from inside, scanning over them and muttering under his breath. Yes. Izuku huffs out with a grin. I got an exam ticket, he says into the phone and to his mother. Oh thank F. I thought I was going to have to murder someone so you could get their spot, Hitoshi says. That doesn't sound like a heroic thing to say, Izuku mutters, but can't fight the grin. Not a hero yet, Hitoshi reminds him, and Izuku laughs and accepts the hug his mother gives him in congratulations. I'm rooting for you too, Inko says. Izuku grins and nods before taking his mail and stopping to grab his bag before heading to his room. You ready for this, Toshi? Only 4 more months before the exam, Izuku reminds him. Well, we still need to have some major study sessions because math still fing esikis, but yeah, I think I'm as ready as I could ever be, he admits softly. And we've got backup plans, just in case. Just in case. Aizawa-san says backup plans are the backbone of any good operation, so I think we're good, Izuku says with a chuckle. We're going to be heroes no matter what, though I would prefer not to have to go the route of vigilantism, you know, Hitoshi jokes. Yeah, I hear the pay SEs and I don't know about you, but support gear is expensive, Izuku shoots back and Hitoshi snorts. If you become vigilantes, you're grounded, Yamada's voice floats from the distance on Hitoshi's side of the phone. Loud Dad has spoken, no vigilantism, Hitoshi says and Izuku snorts loudly. You two ready? 𝐿 asks as the two pros drive Izuku and Hitoshi to UA the day of the entrance exam. I think I might puke, but other than that, I'm good, Hitoshi admits nervously with a faint grimace. Honestly, same, Izuku adds quietly. His mother had had to resort to sleep aids last night to get Izuku to sleep long enough to be rested for the exam today. She unfortunately had to work today, but she said she'd be rooting for him and to call once it was done. You'll do fine, boys, Hisashi says with a grin as he glances back at them through the rearview mirror. And no matter what, we'll be proud of you for giving your all today, got it? He adds. Yeah, even if we don't get into the heroics course right now, we've got backup plans, Hitoshi says with a grin. Backup plans are good, 𝐿 says with a nod. As long as it's not vigilantism, I don't care, Hisashi says with a pointed look through the mirror. That's like plan E or F, Izuku says with a grin and the man groans as 𝐿 snorts. Don't encourage them, Hisashi mutters and 𝐿 holds up his hands. We knew they were problem children from day one. I don't know why you're surprised, 𝐿 mutters. Just do your best and stay legal, Hisashi orders as they pull into the parking lot for UA staff. They all pile out as Hitoshi and Izuku give each other nervous grins. We've got to go help set up for the exam. Just follow the signs and they'll point you where to go to sign in. Good luck, little listeners, Hisashi says with his signature present MIC grin and a few finger guns for added effect. Don't kill anyone, 𝐿 adds and the two nod before they split ways. Rie, Aizu? Hitoshi asks softly as they follow the path from the parking lot to the front of the school where the sign-in station has been set up. Let's do this, Toshi, Izuku mutters with a determined nod. Izuku winces as the burn on his arm twinges. He'd gotten hit by some other exam taker's quirk, the idiot just flinging it around without a care of who was around him. Thankfully it isn't a terrible burn, but he'd been too tired for Recovery Girl to do much except lessen the damage and sending him to the first aid station to have it cleaned and bandaged. Unfortunately, he hadn't had Hitoshi with him in his city, the two split up, though Aizawa had warned them that that might happen. Still, he really wanted his friend to be with him. Maybe he might have gotten more villain points if they could have teamed up. Sighing, he trudges back towards the parking lot where they split ways with Aizawa and Yamada. He'd gotten a text from Hitoshi to say he'd gone ahead to wait for him. The other teen having gotten out of his exam with nothing, but a few scrapes and bruises. He looks up as he rounds the corner of a building to see Hitoshi leaning against his foster parents' car, hands shoved deep into his pockets looking dejected. Yeah, that's about how he feels right now. Toshi, Izuku calls out and the taller teen looks up. How'd it go? He asks him as he gets closer to see a nasty-looking scrape on Hitoshi's arm and a bruise on his neck. I lost count of my points, but I doubt it was enough, he mutters. I know I did well on the written part though. Yeah, same, Izuku mutters leaning on the car next to him. That 0-pointer though, what the hell was that thing? He huffs out and Hitoshi snorts. He waves his arm where it's been wrapped with bandages. Some idiot wasn't even looking where he was throwing his fire quirk. I doubt his getting in. They specifically stated that points would be deducted for using quirks against other exam takers, even accidentally. I mean, come on, how hard is it to look before you throw fire? Izuku huffs out. Yeah, well I had Fing Bakugo in my city, Hitoshi admits. Ouch. Did he try anything? Izuku asks quietly. Nah, he just ignored me like usual. I stayed the hell away from him and he went running in like some maniac to the center of the city so he and I didn't cross paths, Hitoshi admits, rubbing the back of his neck. We knew he'd get in. His quirk's too versatile and strong to not get him in. Hopefully he actually changes for the better by going to UA. Guess that means we're on to plan B then, Izuku sighs softly. Sport festival, Hitoshi says with a frown. Sports festival, Izuku copies. Hey little listeners, Yamada calls out and they both look up to see the two of them walking towards their car. You're looking a little worse for wear, he jokes. Please tell me that idiot isn't getting in. Izuku asks with a look at his arm. We can neither confirm nor deny who is getting in and who isn't. They're still compiling points and scoring tests, Aizawa states flatly, and they sigh, but nod. Come on, boys. I think a little celebration is in order. You did well, no matter what your scores are. We're proud of you, Yamada says, pulling them into a hug, and they nod against him with small smiles on their faces. Did you get it? Hitoshi demands as soon as he sees who is calling and opens the video call with shaking hands. His letter has been sitting on his desk since yesterday, brought home by Hisashi and Shouter from UA. He'd refused to open it until Izuku had gotten his in the mail so they could open it together. I did, Izuku whispers, eyes wide on the small screen of his phone. I'm so nervous, he admits. Want me to go first? Hitoshi asks, and Izuku nods. With shaking hands, Hitoshi rips his open and spies the small disc that falls out. He pulls out the paper first and quickly reads. Past the written, got in Gen Ed. At least, Hitoshi says, and Izuku breathes a small sigh. Hitoshi messes with the disc before it finally springs to life and creates a projection. They both listen raptly as All Might tells them about being hired as the first-year fundamental heroics teacher before going into his scores. He got 23 villain points and 15 rescue points for a total of 38 points. Unfortunately, it isn't enough to get into the heroics course, and All Might closes with some obnoxiously loud words of condolence and his signature laugh before it blinks off. Well, I knew it, but can't help but hope, Hitoshi mutters with a huff, tossing the disc onto his desk before looking at his phone. Your turn, he orders. Izuku nods on the other line and he pulls out his papers before he nods. I passed, so we're good for plan B, Izuku says, and then his disc flicks on with All Might again giving his speech that must be recycled because it's nearly word for word what Hitoshi said with only a few differences. Izuku got 16 villain points and 23 rescue points for a total of 39 points. Not enough to pass either. The same cheap condolences and laugh before it cuts off, and then Izuku lets out the biggest sigh. Well, definitely plan B then, he says aloud before silence descends over them as they think about the future ahead of them. I'm worried, Izuku speaks up suddenly into the silence, and Hitoshi looks at him to see the worried frown on his face. About what? Hitoshi asks, lying down on his bed as he keeps his phone up. Well, the sports festival is 3 events and the last one is always a one-on-one competition. What if we have to fight each other and it means only one of us can get into the hero course? Izuku asks softly. Well, the fact that we would have made it to the last round ahead of all the heroic students will at least mean something. And we go in swinging. No holding back, no holds barred. We show them what we're made of and the victor goes on to the next round. If they can't see we're hero material, I don't know if I want to go to their heroics program, Hitoshi says with a huff. Yeah, Izuku says with a relieved grin. I can do that. Better watch your back, Toshi. I'm coming for you, Izuku says with a grin, and Hitoshi snorts. Bring it on, Aizu, Hitoshi mutters back. Oh, look at you two, so handsome. I'm so proud of you both, 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲 gushes, snapping picture after picture as they stand there awkwardly after the graduation ceremony. Mom, Izuku mutters, flushing a bit. What, I can't be proud my baby boy graduated middle school and is off to start his next stage of life at UA. 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲 asks. We're proud of you boys, Hisashi pipes up, and this time Hitoshi flushes, Aizawa adding his own smile and hair ruffle to the two of them. 𝐒𝐭𝐴-chan, a voice calls out, and they look to see Bakugo Mitsuki rushing over, her husband and son following behind, one smiling, the other sullen. Mitsuki-chan, 𝐒𝐭𝐴 says with a smile as the blonde woman finally draws near. We made it, 𝐒𝐿𝐴 says with a small laugh. Oh, I know. I can't tell you how many times I thought we wouldn't. Just 3 more years, and then we're in the clear, Mitsuki jokes. She notices Hitoshi's dad's standing off to the side and smiles. Oh, did I interrupt something, she asks. No, just taking pictures, 𝐒𝐿𝐴 says. We're Hitoshi's foster dads. Yamada Hisashi says with a smile. Aizawa Shouter adds with a nod. Bakugo Mitsuki says back. This is my husband Masaru and my son Katsuki. Mitsuki turns to Izuku. Izuku-kun, I hear from Inko-chan you got into UA too. Bet you're over the moon, Mitsuki says with a laugh and a heavy shoulder pat. Ah, yes, Izuku says with a smile. Hitoshi and I both got in. Who the F cares about the shitty Deku and the creep, everyone knows Gen Ed is just for the extras not good enough to get into heroics, Katsuki grumbles. If UA had any standards, they'd have kicked them to the curb, he adds sullenly. Katsuki. Mitsuki says angrily. What is wrong with you? That doesn't sound like something a hero would say, Hisashi says evenly, Shouter sending a look at Katsuki. Hey, what the F do you know about heroes? You're just the creep's shitty parents, Katsuki huffs out with a snort. Katsuki, that is enough, Mitsuki yells quietly to keep from drawing attention to them, as both Hisashi and Shouter reach into their pockets at the same time and fish out their wallets, pulling out their hero IDs to flash to Katsuki, whose eyes go wide as he realizes just who he's talking to. I think we know a bit more about being heroes than some wet-behind-the-ears middle schooler, Shouter adds dryly as he returns his ID to his wallet before tucking it away. Maybe next time you don't just word vomit the first stupid thing that comes to your head, kid. You never know who you might be talking to and it'll get you in a lot of trouble in the future if you plan to be a hero, he adds with an arched brow. Whatever, Katsuki growls and storms away, hands fisted. I am so sorry, Mitsuki apologizes, bowing quickly, Masaru following. I don't know what's gotten into that boy here lately. It's quite alright, Hisashi reassures her. Kids say stupid things without thinking about them. Hopefully he'll learn better at UA, he adds. I'll be sure he gets an earful before he sets foot on that campus. I'd rather not get called down because he said something stupid to the wrong person, she mutters as she turns to follow after her son. Bye Inko-chan. Congratulations, boys, she adds. Sorry again about that. Masaru speaks up and bows before following his wife and son. Well now, Inko mutters. Where did that come from? Katsuki used to be such a sweet boy, using such language. Has he been like that in school? She asks Izuku and Hitoshi. Hitoshi shrugs, pretty much, though some days were worse. Izuku nods a little, glancing back the way they went. He cause you two any trouble? Shouter asks quietly. Izuku shrugs. Nothing we can't handle, he says, and Shouter eyes him for a long drawn-out moment before he sighs, but nods. You let us know if he starts anything. I see students like that all the time. They think because they got lucky with their genetics that they are instantly heroes. It doesn't help when people are constantly reinforcing that mindset, as if a quirk makes a hero. He's going to be in for a rude awakening come the start of the year. He'll either shape up and get better, or he'll burn out. I doubt he'll last long in my class if he doesn't change, Shouter adds. Wait, he's in your class? Hitoshi asks excitedly. Shouter nods. Please let me see the camera footage when he realizes you're his homeroom teacher, Hitoshi asks with a grin. No, Shouter says, but they can see the smirk tucked into his capture scarf. Come on boys, just a few more pictures and then we can go and celebrate with good food, Inko says, brandishing her camera, and the two teens groan, but nod, following her dutifully as she leads the way towards a less crowded area for more pictures. Alright, let's eat, Inko says excitedly, and the two teens stare at the spread on the table. A feast created between Hisashi and Inko, who spent the morning cooking before going to the ceremony. The five of them sit and eat, chatting and talking around each other as three cats beg for scraps at their feet. Eventually, they can't eat anymore and they all find themselves in the living area, coffee and tea spread around as Inko gets them all settled. So, we have some presents to give out, Inko says excitedly, for both graduating with such good grades and for getting into UA. I know you didn't quite get the path you wanted, but we're all sure you'll get there eventually. So first, Izuku, here. Inko hands a large box to Izuku and the boy frowns before slowly opening it to stare with wide eyes at the brand new laptop inside. Mom, he cries out with wide eyes wet with tears. How? Oh, hush, sweetheart. I just worked a few extra hours here and there to save up. I know that old brick I gave you when you were younger has been lagging here lately. Hisashi-san helped me pick it out and got it all set up so you can do all your analysis stuff on it and it'll be nice and secure. He can show you how everything works. I'm afraid it's a little more advanced than I'm used to, she waves off with a smile. Izuku carefully sets it aside before rushing over to wrap her in a hug. Thank you, he whispers. Of course. I told you I would support you, and this is one way I can. Now, sit back down. Hitoshi's present is next, 𝐭𝐽 says, and Izuku pulls away to retake his spot next to Hitoshi as Hisashi stands up and 𝐭𝐽 sits. We got you this, Hitoshi. It's all right if you don't want it, and we won't be mad if you say no, but well, he hands over a much smaller box and Hitoshi frowns. That sounds ominous, he says, and then starts to open it, pulling aside tissue paper until he finds folded papers in the bottom. With a glance at his dad's, Hitoshi pulls them out and unfolds them, slowly reading it as his hands start to shake. He looks up with wide eyes. These are adoption papers, he whispers. They are, Hisashi says with a small smile. We did a lot of talking here recently, and, if you would like, we want you to be a permanent part of this family, Hisashi says gently. You want me? Hitoshi asks, voice shaking. Why? Because we love you, Hitoshi. You're our son and we want to make it permanent, Hisashi says quietly. Because we want you to always have a home that's safe for you, Aizawa says simply. You don't have to accept right now if you need to think about it, Hisashi starts to say. Yes. Hitoshi yells, rushing to throw himself at them, and the two men wrap him in a hug as the teen cries. Yes, please, Hitoshi's muffled words come out. Izuku can't stop the tears even if he wanted to, and 𝐭𝐽 has a tissue out as she dabs at her eyes. Eventually, the teen pulls back and wipes at his eyes. I need a pen, he declares, and 𝐭𝐽 grabs one from her purse to hand over, Hitoshi thanking her before he quickly slams the papers down on the table to start signing where he needs to, Hisashi helping him sign. You don't seem very surprised there, problem child. Shouter speaks up, his voice a little rough with emotion as Hitoshi signs. Well, I maybe overheard a few phone calls between you guys and Mom and kind of put it together, though I didn't know when you were going to ask him, Izuku admits, ducking his head with a small smile. You knew. Hitoshi looks up in shock. And you didn't warn me, he grumbles, but Izuku can see the grin still plastered on his face, no matter how much of a mock frown he attempts to make. Payback for when you didn't warn me who Aizawa and Yamada were the first time I came over, Izuku says back with a grin, and Hitoshi laughs as the three adults laugh with him. Thank you for the ride, Izuku says as Yamada drives through the early morning traffic towards UA on their first day of class. Of course, little listener, Yamada says with a grin that he sends through the rearview mirror to the back. It's not like you live that far out of the way. A few extra minutes doesn't make a difference to us, he reassures. Plus, I'm sure 𝐭𝐽-san is glad to know you're getting to school safely. Yeah, Izuku admits. When he told his mom about Yamada and Aizawa's offer to drive him to UA in the mornings and afternoons, she'd been relieved. UA is only 40 minutes away from home by train, but it's still a long way to travel by himself since Hitoshi would be getting a ride no matter what. It's not that she didn't trust him to be able to take care of himself, but she always worries about his safety. Ready for your first day? Aizawa asks the two of them from his slumped spot in the front passenger seat, thermos of coffee clutched in his hands as he glances back at them. Yeah, Izuku nods, Hitoshi grunting in agreement, half leaned on Izuku because his insomnia had flared up badly the night before and he hadn't gotten to sleep until 3 that morning. Do you know who our homeroom teacher is? He asks. He and Hitoshi had gotten their info packets a few weeks ago and had learned they were both in 1C, so they're at least in the same class. Yep, Yamada says as Aizawa smirks, but neither says anything further, and Izuku nods, but sighs, guessing they plan for it to be a surprise. The car pulls into the teacher's entrance, a cleverly hidden underground tunnel that spits them out into the parking lot a good distance from the main school entrance. Yamada parks and the two teens start to get out of the car. Okay, you two, Yamada says brightly. We're a bit early, so you can wander around or just head straight to your classroom. Sho and I have to go get ready, but if you need us for anything, we'll have our phones on us and we'll mainly be in the teacher's lounge before classes start. Okay, Izuku says, Hitoshi nodding as he yawns. Then Izuku grabs his taller friend and starts to tow him away from the parking lot with a wave at the two pros before they disappear into a different direction. You awake yet, Toshi? Izuku asks quietly as they wander the grounds for a bit, not wanting to go to their classroom just yet. No, Hitoshi mutters. Okay. Izuku nods and keeps his grip on Hitoshi's jacket to guide him as his friend walks and stumbles beside him. 30 minutes before the start of class, they head for 1C, following the signs to get there. There are only a few students already there and they ignore them as he and Hitoshi come in, glance at the board to see there's no seating chart and then proceed to take 2 desks in the back with Izuku in front of Hitoshi. Hitoshi slumps into his seat and pillows his head on his arms as Izuku pulls out his phone to catch up on any news that might have happened since he last checked it earlier that morning. When he doesn't find anything worth writing about, he starts scrolling through random videos before he finds something he likes before scratching at Hitoshi's head until the teen groans and turns slightly to look at him. Izuku shows him the cute cat video he found. They spend the rest of the time watching funny cat videos while they wait for their homeroom teacher to get there. The bell rings and Izuku tucks away his phone right as the door opens and a familiar voice calls out, "Everybody say hey." Izuku sends a look to Hitoshi. "Good morning, little listeners. It's the start of a new year, so let's strike up a tune and get this jam session off to a blazing start." Yamada calls out and the class breaks out into excited whispers as Present Mic steps into the room in his full hero costume. He flashes his signature smile and throws a few finger guns. "Toshi, your dad is our homeroom teacher," Izuku whispers softly to his friend and Hitoshi groans, head thumping onto the desk as Yamada starts to get the class ready to introduce themselves to everyone. "Heads up, Pomeranian alert," Hitoshi mutters as they settle at a free lunch table. Hitoshi can see the blonde glaring daggers at them from the other side of the cafeteria and as Izuku glances behind him, the blonde growls before he looks away from them. "What do you want to bet he thinks we're to blame for his homeroom teacher?" Hitoshi asks with a snicker. Izuku sighs softly as he takes a bite of his katsudon. "More than likely, as if we have any say in who UA hires," Izuku huffs out. "Oh, I talked with Yamada-san and he said as long as we make a reservation in advance, we can use the school gyms to train after classes." "That's good. I like the gym at home, but it's a pain to have to wait to go home to train," Hitoshi mutters and bites into his own food. They both jump as a tray is abruptly dropped onto their table and they look up to see a grinning pink-haired girl standing there. "Hi, Hatsumai, mind if I sit here?" "I'm starving," she says, holding out a hand to them. Hitoshi looks her up and down, and notices the soot and grease stains on her, guessing she's from support. "Sure," Hitoshi shrugs as Izuku shakes her hand. "I'm Midoriya Izuku. That's Shinso Hitoshi, we're in class 1C, Izuku greets with a smile. Hitoshi had decided to keep his last name for now, still not sure which of his new parents' names to take or if he should just take both. Shouter and Hizashi said it was fine and could always be changed later when he did come to a decision. "Oh, Gen Ed. I'm support myself, 1H, wanna see one of my babies?" She asks excitedly as she sits and takes a bite of her food, hardly chewing before swallowing as she extracts something from her pocket. Before either boy can agree or not, she pulls out a small metal ball and drops it onto the table before pressing a little button on the top and parts of it unfold from the sides. Hitoshi realizes that they are wings as it starts to buzz with how fast they're moving as the ball rises a few inches off the table. "It's a prototype for a baby I wanna build. I finished it today," Mai explains before it sparks suddenly, smokes a bit and then falls to the table with a thump as the wings lay there limply. "Wow, that was so cool," Izuku infuses and Hitoshi can admit to himself that his was pretty neat. He's never had any longing to make this stuff, but he can appreciate the coolness factor. "Did you model the wings off of a hummingbird's? What do you intend the final design to do? Do you think there's a way to make the wings silent so they can go stealth? What about size? Can you go smaller? They'd be really cool for stealth cameras, especially if they are really small. Oh, maybe there's some way to create a light refraction barrier so they can go invisible," Izuku says rapidly. Mai's eyes go wide at his question explosion and she reaches over to grip his hands. "Yes, you get it," she says with a cackle. "I need to pick your brain, green bean. We could make so many babies together and everyone will want my babies. Hatsum Industries is going to be the most sought-after support gear out there," she crows as Izuku flushes at her words. "Thanks," Izuku says as she lets go and scoops up her invention, carelessly stuffing it back into her pocket before returning to her food. Of course. If you ever need support gear, come to me, you hear, she says with a pointed look and gesturing with her fork at them. I'll outfit you with the best babies out there, hands down. Izuku grins brightly. Thank you, Hatsume-san, Izuku says back. Call me Mai. I think this will be the start of our appealing partnership, she says with a grin at the two of them. Now, tell me about your quirks so I can start coming up with ideas, she orders, and with a snort, they do. Mai hums and nods, mind whirring with ideas. I actually have some ideas, if you'd like to see, Mai-san, Izuku admits, holding up his notebook, and she nods eagerly. He opens to Hitoshi's pages. I was thinking a voice changer that will work with Tosh's quirk so that he can use it sneakily, you know, Izuku explains, and she nods, pulling out her own notebook to start scribbling ideas down. We decided on both something around the throat and something like a mask that he can use for different situations, he adds. Smart. The throat one would be much easier to hide too. Make it slim enough and a good turtleneck could hide it, she says with a mutter. I'll need to see how your quirk works and find a way for it to work through support gear. Voice quirks are tricky when it comes to channeling them through technology. Some work and some don't. Maybe something that acts more like a resonating rod, adjusting the frequency of his voce without actually channeling it through a microphone, she mutters to herself before looking up at Izuku. You have ideas for you as well. Izuku nods and turns to his pages. I want something a little similar to present MIC's directional speak. Something that will help me throw my voice further and increase the volume of it. I don't have the destructive power his does, but mine is much more precise and flexible in range. I can only use it on someone in my current range, but if I can get to them further away, he explains, trailing off, and she nods eagerly. I can ask MIC-sensei if I can have a look at his support schematics so I can get an idea of how it's put together. This is something for your ears, she asks, pointing to his next image. I wanted something to increase my hearing. Right now, I can only hear like a normal person, but if I can hear better, even through walls, I could gather information much easier, he explains. Mai nods, that's doable. I know they have stuff similar to that out there, but from the way you describe your hearing, it needs to have a much broader range of frequencies it picks up too. Oh, I have so many ideas. Do you mind if I add stuff to it, like extra fun stuff? She asks eagerly. Sure, Izuku says with wide eyes, nodding eagerly. You actually want to build this for us, he asks, shocked. Of course. Support students are allowed to take side projects, especially for heroic students or those trying to get into heroics. You won't be able to use these at the festival unless you get specific permission like us support students get. But if you get in, then you'll have your gear already made once the transfer goes through. You think we can get in? Hitoshi asks in surprise. Of course, and with my babies to help you, you'll take medals home for sure, Mai says with an excited cackle. The first time the alarm had gone off the day before, Izuku, Mai and Hitoshi had been outside eating their lunch as Mai described her first attempts to make their support gear. Hitoshi and Izuku had promised to stop by later after school to demonstrate in more detail how their quirks work so she can use it for their gear. They'd all jumped, well Izuku and Hitoshi had. Mai just glanced up, as the alarm blared the announcement of a security alert. Hitoshi looks at Izuku in confusion. It means someone is on campus that isn't supposed to be, Izuku explains as they glance around nervously before they spot the horde of reporters rushing across campus. Oh, it's just the press, Mai says with a shrug and goes back to eating. They don't think much about it other than to ask Yamada and Aizawa on the way home what had happened to allow the press on campus. They tell them a bit, but the two are more annoyed by already having problems from having All Might being on campus. When the alarm goes off the second time the next day, they're in their afternoon classes. The class starts muttering and whispering as it goes off, announcing a level 5 security breach and that all students need to evacuate to their designated areas while all pros are needed at the USJ. Izuku sees Hitoshi pale at the announcement. What? Izuku whispers as they follow their class representatives towards the evacuation area. Dad said he was taking his class to the USJ today, he explains quickly, looking worried. He'll be fine. The others are going to help, Izuku tries to reassure him, taking his hand and holding it as Hitoshi pulls out his phone and keeps glancing down at it, hoping for a text from either of his dads to say everything is fine. It's nearly an hour later that the alarms stop blaring and the announcement comes over the speakers to say that the situation is clear. All students are dismissed for the day. Sharing a glance, they break away from their class and rush towards the teacher's lounge in the hopes of finding Hitoshi's dads. It's nearly 30 more minutes before they see anyone coming towards the lounge. Auntie Nem, Hitoshi calls out quickly, spotting Midnight in the group of pros returning. Eraserhead and Present Mic are glaringly absent and Izuku grips Hitoshi's hand tighter as he looks frantically for his dads. Hitoshi-kun, it's okay, Midnight says quickly, rushing up to herd the two of them towards a private conference room and shuts the door behind them. What happened? Where's Dad and Pops? Hitoshi asks shakily. Midnight sighs, running a hand through her hair. The others will find out soon, but there was a breach at the USJ. A bunch of villains managed to get into the building with a warp quirk and disabled the alarms. We found out because one as class president managed to escape the building and call in the attack. Shouter's pretty badly hurt. So is 13, she admits with a wince. It's not life-threatening, but Hisashi went with your dad in the ambulance. Hisashi asked me to take you two home, she explains softly. No, I want to go see him, Hitoshi demands, looking close to freaking out. Hitoshi, Midnight says softly. I'll go home afterwards. I just need to see for myself that he's okay, Hitoshi insists. Midnight sighs, but nods sympathetically. Okay. You two go get your things and meet me by their car. I'll drive you to the hospital first. Izuku, call your mother so she knows you're okay, she adds, the woman having met Inko before. I will, Izuku says as Midnight stands and ushers them out of the room, the two boys rushing towards their classroom to grab their things before turning around and running towards the parking lot. Midnight is already in the car waiting for them, changed out of her hero gear and in something comfortable. They pile in the car and as Midnight drives towards the hospital, Izuku quickly calls his mother, who had apparently just seen the breaking news of UA being attacked. He's quick to reassure her that he and Hitoshi are fine and explains softly about Aizawa being hurt and going to go see him before coming home. Stay at Hitoshi's for now. I'm going to be working late and I'd feel better if you were with someone right now. I'll pick you up on the way home, Inko instructs and Izuku agrees easily. He probably would have asked anyways with how freaked out Hitoshi looks, the boy still holding his hand tightly as he nearly vibrates out of his seat with impatience for them to get to the hospital. Izuku hangs up and a few minutes later, Midnight pulls into the hospital's parking garage, snagging a free spot. They follow her out of the car and into the hospital. It doesn't take them long to be directed to the waiting room where Yamada is in the middle of wearing a trail in the room as he paces. Pops, Hitoshi calls out. Hisashi stops, bracing as Hitoshi slams into his chest, wrapping him in a tight hug. Hitoshi, he whispers as Hitoshi clings to him. It's okay. It's going to be okay. How bad is it? Hitoshi asks softly. Sho's in surgery right now. Recovery girl is with them as they work and he's going to be okay, but there was a bit of damage in the fight. They have to go in to manually move some of his ocular bones around before they can attempt to heal the damage, but he'll live. He's too stubborn to let this take him out, got it? Yamada whispers fiercely and Hitoshi nods against his chest. He looks up to see Izuku hanging back. Come here, little listener, he says, holding up an arm, and Izuku rushes forward to hug him too. He's going to be fine. They pull apart a few minutes later and settle in some chairs as they wait for the doctors to come tell them how the surgery went. Mom said I should stay with Hitoshi until she can come pick me up, Izuku says softly. That's fine. If she can't come get you, you can just spend the night, okay? Yamada says with a WN smile and Izuku nods. Nem, I'm going to be here for a while. Do you mind keeping an eye on them? Yamada asks her. Of course. You focus on Shouter and I'll watch over these two, she assures him, and he smiles gratefully. It's nearly 2 hours later that the doctor finally comes out. He's doing fine. He's stable and resting right now as the reversal brings him off the anesthesia. Both arms had multiple breaks, but we were able to repair them without having to use any pins or screws, though they'll need to be casted while they finish healing and the soft tissue damage heals as well. The skin on his elbow has been repaired from the quirk damage there and should heal fine. The worst damage was to his head, unfortunately. He had a major concussion as well as fractures in his right cheekbone and ocular socket. We managed to remove the shards that had gotten lodged under his eye from the blows and healed them up. It's hard to say if there will be any damage to his quirk or eyesight. Right now, there's just too much swelling to be sure. He'll be here for tonight and into tomorrow for observation, but afterwards he should be okay to go home so long as he rests. Recovery Girl has also said she will handle healing the rest of his injuries once he gets enough strength, she adds with a nod to the smaller woman stepping into the room. Thank you, Yamada says with a smile of relief. Can we go see him, he asks. In a few minutes. He's still getting settled into his room, but once they're done, they'll send someone for you, she assures him and then walks off with a slight bow. Chiyo-san, Yamada says softly. He'll be fine, dearie. There'll be some scars definitely and he'll need some physical therapy once the casts come off, but he'll recover in time, she says with a smile and a pat to his arm. Aizawa, a man speaks up and they look to see a man in nurse scrubs standing by the door that leads further into the hospital. He's ready for visitors. He's still asleep, but he should be coming out of that within the next half an hour or so, they say, and Yamada nods. Go on, dear. I'll inform Nezu about the prognosis, Recovery Girl says and steps away to let them follow the nurse towards Aizawa's room. Inside, Aizawa is unconscious on the bed, head and arms wrapped in bandages with both arms casted up to the shoulder. Izuku and Midnight let Yamada and Hitoshi have the chairs by the bed as they wait to see if the man will wake up. Nearly 40 minutes later, a crackling voice speaks up. 𝐔𝐬𝐚𝐿. Aizawa mutters and barely seen eyes under all the bandages open to look at his husband. Show, Yamada says quickly, standing up with a blinding grin. To Toshi, he asks. Here, Yamada says and Hitoshi leans closer so the man doesn't have to move to see him. Hi, Dad, Hitoshi whispers. How do you feel, Sho? Yamada asks. Numb, he manages to get out. Well, you are on some strong painkillers so I'm not surprised. I'll get the doctor to let them know you're awake, Yamada says and rushes off for a moment. You okay, Toshi? Aizawa asks his son. I'm okay, Hitoshi croaks out, wiping at his eyes. Sorry, he mutters. Remember what I told you, Aizawa mutters. Hitoshi smiles wanly. Nothing to be sorry about for crying, Hitoshi says, wiping at his tears. Dark eyes glance towards where Izuku and Midnight are standing. Hey Nem, problem child, he greets softly. Same for you. Izuku nods as he wipes his eyes, relief sharp in his chest as Midnight pulls a handkerchief from her purse to wipe at her eyes. A few seconds later, Yamada returns with the doctor who does a brief exam on the hero before saying he should rest, marking something on his chart before leaving them. Aizawa falls asleep not long after and Yamada finally allows his own tears to fall as he breathes out a shaky breath. I'm okay, he whispers as Midnight wraps an arm around him. We knew the risks when we took this job. It just never gets easier, you know, he huffs out as he accepts Midnight's handkerchief to wipe at his eyes. He straightens before looking at Hitoshi and Izuku. You boys should go home. I don't know when I'll be back, but you shouldn't have to hang around here waiting. I'll keep you updated, okay Toshi? Yamada says softly to his son. Okay, Izuku says when Hitoshi can only nod silently. Come on boys, we'll stop and grab something to eat on the way home, Midnight says softly and gently herds them out of the room after a final hug from Yamada before she leads them out of the hospital and back to the car. They stop for some food and then return back to Hitoshi's apartment. Midnight speaks softly with the security guard there when he asks about what happened before they park and head up to the apartment, Hitoshi still silent. They don't say much as they eat. They change out of their UA uniforms, Izuku borrowing some of Hitoshi's clothes and then retreat to the teens' room, Midnight staying in the living room texting to someone on her phone. You okay? Izuku asks as they sit on Hitoshi's bed. I don't know, he admits softly. I've seen him come home hurt before. He's even had to go to the hospital, but it's never been that bad before, he whispers and Izuku lets him clutch at his hand as he wipes at his eyes. Yeah, Izuku admits softly. I hope 13 and the students are okay too, he whispers, recalling that Katsuki is in Aizawa's class. Yeah, Hitoshi mutters. He lies back and Izuku follows. He doesn't know when they fell asleep, but he does remember waking up the next morning with a blanket over them and Hitoshi still clinging to his hand. 𝐿𝐴 comes home nearly 2 days later. UA had sent out notice that the campus would be closed for the rest of the week and that classes would resume on Monday at the usual time. Hisashi had driven to the hospital to pick him up and had returned an hour later. Hitoshi knows what to expect from visiting the man in the hospital, but knowing and seeing are two entirely different things. As Hisashi guides 𝐿𝐴 into the living room so the man can collapse onto the couch, Hitoshi can see that he's in pain, eyes tight and posture stiff as he settles onto the couch. All 3 cats come ∈ into the room to inspect him, sniffing at him after being gone for so long. 𝐿𝐴 scratches at their ears as best he can with his arms casted. "Hey, it's okay," Hisashi says, seeing Hitoshi standing by the entrance to the hall, looking uncertainly at 𝐿𝐴. "He's doing fine and recovery girl's going to heal him some more tomorrow," he explains and Hitoshi nods. "I'm okay, Hitoshi," 𝐿𝐴 speaks up, dark eyes looking at the teen. "I promise I'm not going anywhere," he adds. "Okay," Hitoshi whispers, stepping further into the room and settles on the couch near him, taking Fritz onto his lap to pet her. "You sure you're okay, Toshi?" Izuku asks softly that Monday as they eat lunch. Mai isn't with them today, the girl working on something instead of eating. "Yeah, I'm okay. Dad's already back at work. I thought Pops was going to have a fit when he said he was going back to class, but you know how Dad is. He'd come back even if he was dying," Hitoshi huffs out. "He did promise to take it easy though, so I guess that's something." "How long before he get the casts off?" Izuku asks. Pop said 2 to 3 weeks. It depends on if recovery girl okay's healing him in shorter bursts, thus the taking it easy part. He should have them off after the sports festival though, he adds. "Oh yeah, that's coming up quick, Izuku huffs out with a nervous grin. "I talked with Mai yesterday and she said she should have your throat piece and mine as well finished by then, but the others won't be ready until after the festival," he adds. "Any idea how we go about getting permission to use them in the festival?" Hitoshi asks. He's been a little distracted with what happened, but Izuku is more than willing to help him out. "I asked Midnight Sensei. She said they have the request forms in the teacher's lounge and we just have to ask for them, so I got them before coming here," Izuku says, reaching into his bag to pull out the 2 forms. Hitoshi looks them over before frowning. "What does this mean, reason for using?" Hitoshi asks. "Oh, like why you want to use it, how it will be used to help your quirk, or how it will physically aid you in the festival. Normally only the support students have blanket permission to bring their gear because it's one way for them show their babies off. They do allow other courses besides the hero students to bring gear if they can justify the reasoning, though I know they allow the support gear that is for disabilities and such, too." "Okay, that sounds reasonable," Hitoshi mutters. "Now how do we write it to justify us having it in the festival?" Hitoshi asks and Izuku grins. "Leave that to me," Izuku says and Hitoshi grins back. "Though we'll have to wait until Mai gets them mostly finished so we can give an accurate description of what they do. We can turn in the request up to 4 days before the event. Hopefully that will be enough time for her," he mutters. "I'm sure she'll do amazing and even if she can't finish in time, we'll just go in without support gear," Hitoshi says and Izuku nods. "I've run into a bit of a snag on both of your gear," Mai admits later that week. "Oh, what's wrong?" Hitoshi asks as they eat lunch. "Your unique quirks," she says with a grin as if it's a challenge and not a problem. "I can get it to record voices and use it to cover your own voice, Sleepy Cat, but getting that extra bit that is your quirk is another matter. And Green Bean, your quirk isn't actually your physical voice, so I have to figure out a way for it to transmit your quirk a different way since I can't rely on your vocal cords to transmit the sounds," she huffs out with a frown. "Do you think you could figure it out before the festival?" Izuku asks plainly. "Maybe, if I push it, but it will be very last minute and there's always the odds of it not working since I won't have time to run tests on it," she admits with a scowl at her ideas not meeting her time perimeters. "Then don't rush, Mai," Izuku says with a grin. "I'm your support manufacturer. I should be able to meet your deadlines," she huffs out. "Mai, as long as they're ready for us by the time we transfer, then that's fine." It was wishful thinking that they would be ready before the festival. It's no fault on you, promise, Hitoshi says with a tired grin. We'll just have to kick butt the old-fashioned way, Hitoshi adds. Focus on the stuff you want to bring to the festival to show off, okay? Izuku says and Mai nods with a grin. Wanna see what babies I'm bringing to show off? Mai asks with a grin and they both nod, the girl quickly pulling out her sketchbook to thumb through it to show them her babies. I think I might be sick and I don't want to throw up on live TV, Izuku mutters as they follow the rest of their class into the stadium, the crowd roaring as the first-year students make their appearance. Just don't puke on me please, Hitoshi mutters back. If you do, I will and no one wants to see that. Izuku snorts softly at Hitoshi's joke and then they listen to the extremely short speech Bakugo gives and groan while the other students boo and jeer at him. What a thing show off, Hitoshi mutters. Well, he's lasted this long in Aizawa's class so maybe he's actually improving, Izuku mutters and Hitoshi begrudgingly agrees with a nod. If anyone won't put up with showboating and empty boasts, it's his dad. Let's just hope he'll have improved enough to not be a total bag of PPS by the time we get in there, he adds and Izuku snorts so loudly one of their classmates looks back at them. They wait as the first challenge is announced by midnight, obstacle course. The heavy hitters are going to rush out first and try and slow down as many as possible right at the start. Hang back a bit and then go once they get ahead. We don't need to be in first, just high enough to place for the next challenge, Izuku mutters to him. What would I do without you? Hitoshi asks as they arrange themselves about midway in the crowd. Fail miserably, Izuku shoots back, and be forced to vigilantism while giving Yamada gray hairs. True, Hitoshi agrees with a grin. See you at the finish line, Hitoshi adds as the alarm blares and they fight against the surge of bodies around them, keeping back as the first obstacle comes right at them in the form of too many bodies in a narrow passage. Ice erupts ahead of them and a blast of frigid air blows past them as Izuku's prediction comes true, one of the hero students immobilizing a huge chunk of students ahead of them by freezing their feet to the ground. Go high, Hitoshi calls out and Izuku nods, both using the training Aizawa drilled into them over the last 3 years to climb over their stuck classmates by using shoulders and heads to rush forward, others following their idea. They burst out into the light with others right on their heels and keep pushing forward. Don't use your quirk until at least second round, Toshi. You need the element of surprise, Izuku says right in his ear, throwing his voice and Hitoshi nods as they come across the chaotic scene of one toppled and frozen zero-pointer and the rest of them along with a horde of smaller robots. Really? Hitoshi yells in indignation as he quickly ducks under a two-pointer as it swings at him and following Izuku as he weaves between the machines, avoiding rather than focusing on stopping them. Why is UA so obsessed with robots? I'm putting in a formal complaint after this. Excessive use of robots, Hitoshi shouts and Izuku laughs so hard he nearly gets clotheslined by a one-pointer before he manages to duck under it. They manage to pull ahead of the horde of machines, leaving them to the others to deal with and soon find themselves before a wide chasm with narrow pillars interspaced between its walls and ropes strung between them all. Hitoshi also finally notices that Izuku seemed to have grabbed a large chunk of metal plating from the destroyed zero-pointer. What's that for? He asks as they both watch Mai jump off the side of the chasm cackling before she pops up on one of the pillars using her support gear. Just in case, Izuku shrugs as they take to the ropes. They make pretty good time. They're pulling themselves hand over hand quickly. Honestly, this isn't the worst exercise they've ever done and Aizawa was sure to train them for a lot of different scenarios. Izuku gets across first and offers a hand to Hitoshi to pull him over the edge. They take off at a fast run, noticing the others slowing down as they see the sign for the landmines. They watch as a cloud of pink goes up as a student triggers one. Toshi, Izuku mutters, a slow grin spreading across his face. I have a stupid idea, he admits as they stand still for a moment. Lay it on me, Hitoshi nods back, all for Izuku's ideas. He has long since accepted that Izuku is the brains of this friendship they have going on. A huge explosion and air surfing, Izuku says, holding out the metal he'd grabbed. You won me over at huge explosion, Hitoshi says and Izuku drags him off to the side as they quickly start digging up mines people haven't triggered. Once they have a significant pile, Izuku carefully lays the metal over the pile, angling it towards the end of the course. Jump on 3, 𝐒𝐿 says and he nods. 1, 2, 3. They both jump onto it, landing in a crouch, 𝐒𝐿 gripping the wire still attached and Hitoshi gripping 𝐒𝐿. With a resounding boom they go flying through the air. This is so stupid, Hitoshi laughs. 𝐒𝐿 nods as heads turn to see where the explosion came from as they go sailing overhead. We're not going to make the edge, he adds as the wind whps by and they start to arc down. Use them as springboards, 𝐒𝐿 shouts, and they jump at the last moment using the two, who Hitoshi recognizes as Bakugo and the teen who let off the ice attack, to push off their shoulders as 𝐒𝐿 slams the metal down on the ground and triggers 5 different mines at the same time, throwing the two off their feet as they push away and manage to use the force to make the last few feet of the minefield. Last one across has to buy lunch. Hitoshi shouts as he rolls and jumps up, 𝐒𝐿 cursing and following hot on his heels. They can hear Bakugo's cursing behind them, but they don't slow. The entrance comes into view, but Hitoshi can feel himself lagging, chest heaving. 𝐒𝐿 pulls ahead by a bit, always the faster of the two of them, and then horns blare around them. They fall, rolling forward and collapse onto the grass as giggles break out as they try to catch their breath. I can't believe we did that, 𝐒𝐿 gasps out. Hitoshi reaches over to smack his arm. Don't let it go to your head. I plan on beating you in the 3rd round, he huffs back. With a groan, they get up and make their way towards the water station set off to the side, taking a cup and chugging it as they wait for the rest of the runners to cross. 𝐒𝐿-kun, Hitoshi-kun, that was brilliant, Mai cries out, rushing up to them with her signature grin. I should make that my next baby, she adds. Thanks, 𝐒𝐿 says with a grin. We saw you jump the chasm. Your stuff looks amazing as usual, he informs her. And this isn't even all of my babies. Just wait, I'm going to show them all off, she declares as the horn blares for the last student who is making it into the 2nd round. As the rest of the students who didn't make it in start to trek to the stands, Midnight calls the rest towards the small stage where she announces the next event, Cavalry Battle. Mai-san, Toshi, you with me? 𝐒𝐿 asks nervously after his pointer mount is announced. Like I'm going to abandon you, Hitoshi says with a nod. Do we need someone else for our team, he asks as Mai nods in agreement. We need a heavy hitter, 𝐒𝐿 mutters, looking around, no doubt having been watching everyone throughout the last challenge and analyzing their quirks. He points towards a teen standing off to the side, and before either of them can say anything, he rushes ahead. Hitoshi huffs, eyeing the teen's feathered bird head, and tries to remember what his quirk is, but can't. Hi, yes, we're looking for a last member to our team. Your quirk is amazing and would be perfect, 𝐒𝐿 exclaims in a rush, sending off his usual blinding grin at the teen. You want this dark soul on your team, the teen asks, and 𝐒𝐿 nods. I would be honored to assist you in this endeavor. We should probably learn about each other's quirks and come up with a strategy, he adds. Come on, I've already got a plan, but I need to know more about your quirk, 𝐒𝐿 says, and he nods. The teen's name is Tokoyami Fumikage, his quirk, or partner really, is Dark Shadow, and 𝐒𝐿 looks nearly ready to burst out of his skin with a longing to drill the hero student on his quirk, but they don't have much time before the start of the challenge, so 𝐒𝐿 holds off. Okay, Tokoyami-san, Dark Shadow-san, you'll be out front horse. Keep any incoming attacks from us. You've got the mid-range and long-range covered for that, 𝐒𝐿 instructs. Mai, what do you have gear-wise? 𝐒𝐿 asks, and Mai quickly pulls out her jetpack, hover boots with an extra set for some reason, and a small gun, but with a really wide barrel. It shoots sticky foam ball that rapidly expand. I've only got 3 shots for it, but it can stop a person in their tracks, she explains with a grin, and 𝐒� nods eagerly. Okay, Mai and Hitoshi, you've got the hover boots. I'll take the jetpack. Toshi, you and I are on distraction duty. Try not to use your quirk too much, or if you do, use something else to hide its activation. Wave your hands, point, whatever. Just don't let them guess your vocal activation. I'll be throwing voices around and giving out false orders from their teammates to confuse them. Mai, you've got the gun. I'll let you decide who to take out, but leave 1 shot just in case, he orders. You have a devious mind, Tokoyami comments. Welcome to my world, Hitoshi drawls as Izuku flushes a bit at the strange compliment, and then the horn for the end of the planning session sounds. They get into formation on the edge of the field and wait. They're all going to be coming for us for the most part. This is a giant game of keep away. We go high when we need to and keep them at bay otherwise. Watch out for Kaken and the ice guy. I'm sure they're going to be our biggest problems, Izuku instructs softly, and they all nod. The horn blares as Midnight cracks her WHP and chaos breaks out as almost all the groups aim right for them. Hover boots, Izuku shouts, and Hitoshi and Mai click their heels, the boots whirring to life. Turn your heads, Izuku instructs as the jetpack roars to life and they shoot into the air. Tokoimi, to your right, Izuku shouts to the teen, and Dark Shadow shoots out to intercept an attack before they reach as high as they can with their weight. Mai, how long can we stay up? Izuku asks as the two of them use their boots to direct them away from the sea of teams below. Ice suddenly shoots across the ground, freezing most of them before a burst of electricity shoots out and stuns them. A minute tops, but we should drop before then so we don't overheat the motors, Mai admits. I was still working on their weight capacity and move, she shouts back, and Izuku nods. Aim to our left for that clear space. Keep them chasing us while the others pick each other off, Izuku orders. Got it, they all shout, and then they're coming down for a rough landing. Pomeranian coming behind us, Hitoshi shouts, hearing Bakugo's yelling and explosions. Todoroki is coming from our right as well, Tokoyami adds. Up, Izuku shouts, and they take to the air again. I'll stall Kaken's team, Izuku adds, and though Hitoshi can't hear it, he knows Izuku is throwing his voice and turns just in time to see Kirishima try to stop as Ashido tries to turn right and Bakugo goes flying off his team before Zero snags him with his tape to pull him back. The blonde shouts and smacks angrily at his teammates before another team rushes in front of them, and before they can react, his headband is snatched. One distracted, Hitoshi says as they turn to see Todoroki's team bearing down on them. Up, Izuku yells, and they go high again just in time as more ice crackles across the ground right where they had just been. Mai cackles and shoots off a shot at a team trying to go to their landing spot, and the foam shot hits one of them in the leg and suddenly expands rapidly, encasing his legs and another teammates as the force of their running jarks them forward and they fall in a pile, disqualified. Excellent shot, Mad One, Tokoyami says as Dark Shadow rushes out to knock another projectile away before they land. How much time left? Hitoshi huffs out. 3 minutes, Izuku says distractedly, and he watches another team try to go in different directions before they drop their rider and are disqualified. Mai shoots off another shot and takes out a second team before she reluctantly puts her gun away to save the last shot. Before they can turn to take back to the air as a few more of the remaining teams rush them, a wall of ice erupts from the ground and cuts their escape route off, and they look back to see Todoroki and his team bearing down on them. 1 minute, Izuku huffs out. Mai, when I say so, use the last shot on their horse. Stop him before he can pick up speed, Izuku instructs. Toshi, see if you can catch one of them, he orders. Tokoyami, Dark Shadow, see if you can hold them off as long as possible. I'll play distraction, Izuku huffs out as they watch their horse, who has engines on his legs, charge them up and then goes running straight at them. Toshi go, Dark Shadow, go, he orders as they strive to the right quickly. Todoroki has fire. If you use the foam he could burn it away, Tokoyami cautions as Dark Shadow shoots out. Trust me, he won't, Izuku mutters as the other team gets closer, ignoring Hitoshi as he shouts at them trying to get one to respond, and they swerve around Dark Shadow's attack. They're meters away when Izuku shouts, Mai, now. With a cackle, Mai draws her gun and aims for Teen's legs and hips. The ball hits and sticks before it rapidly expands, fouling his legs and nearly sending the whole team to the ground before a wall of ice catches them. They try and yank the foam away, but hands and tools quickly get stuck to it. With a huge sigh of relief from Hitoshi, the horn sounds to announce that time has run out. We did it! Izuku shouts and then nearly topples off his perch, Hitoshi and Mai quickly catching him as he laughs. You all are a most formidable team. I am glad you chose me for this endeavor and look forward to facing you in the next challenge, Tokoyami says with a nod as cheers erupt from the stands before he walks off. The announcement for lunch goes out and they both sag. In relief. Mai, you want to join us for lunch? Hitoshi offers. I need to go over my babies to make sure they're ready for the show, she says with a grin. See you next round, she adds and rushes off after collecting her gear from them. Let's go find Dad and Pops, Hitoshi mutters. I'm starving. Please, Izuku says with a tired grin, and they walk towards one of the field exits to try and track down Hitoshi's dads. Izuku and Hitoshi are nearly late back to the field, Yamada and Aizawa keeping them distracted and Izuku's mom crying happily on the phone when she calls them. She'd been forced to work today, but had promised to watch the live broadcast while she worked. He can hear her co-workers cheering in the background. They finally break free, if only because Yamada and Aizawa need to get back to the sound booth to continue the commentary, so they manage to reach the field unhindered. Izuku walks beside Hitoshi quietly as they head down one of the halls. Ready, Toshi? Izuku asks quietly, just a moment between the two of them. More than ready, Hitoshi admits with a small grin. Remember, no holding back. We go full force and may the best one win, Hitoshi reminds him and Izuku nods. No quirks, okay. We both know each other's quirks too well and I know yours won't work on me anyways. We show them we don't need our quirks to be hero student material. Other fights, sure, but not ours, he adds quietly. Oh, I'm hoping to take a few of those hero students down before they even realize what is going on, Hitoshi jokes and Izuku grins back as they step out onto the field with the rest of the students that made it to the final competition. Katsuki glares clear across from the field at them, but they ignore him. Midnight steps up to the stage once more. We have 4 teams victorious, Team Midoriya, Team Todoroki, Team Bakugo and Team Monoma. We are ready to draw the lots for our final challenge, a fighting tournament pitting student against student until only one stands victorious over the others. Come up and draw your lots to place you in the bracket, she orders and they all do. Izuku watches the bracket fill up and breathes a small sigh as he and Hitoshi end up on opposite ends. At least we won't face each other for a while, Izuku says with a grin. Yes, but you have to face Todoroki once you get through the first round, Hitoshi points out. You've got Kaken, Izuku points out. Please, that loudmouth has no idea how my quirk works. He's honestly going to be too easy. I know which buttons to push, Hitoshi reminds him. True, but be careful anyways. You have to face someone else first before you can get to Kaken, Izuku reminds him. Fine, but you better not get knocked out before we can fight, Hitoshi mutters back and Izuku grins as the bracket is finished and they call the time for the recreational games. Wanna play some games? Izuku asks as the contestants start to disperse. Nah, let's save our energy for the fights ahead, Hitoshi says, and they wander back into the stadium's halls to find one's waiting room to wait for the tournament to begin. What can you tell me about this Uraraka girl? Hitoshi asks as they look over the bracket on the screen in the room. I'm not sure exactly how her quirk works, but it's a 5-finger touch quirk and has something to do with weight. Best guess, she can make things float or perhaps decrease their weight. Don't let her touch you with all her fingers. I'd say use your quirk, but you could probably beat her in hand-to-hand. Your choice, honestly, Izuku shrugs. Mine is going to be interesting, Izuku adds with a huff. He's got some sort of copy quirk. I doubt even if he copies mine he'll be able to use it properly, and honestly, he might be distracted by the hearing portion of it. I've learned over the years to filter out a lot of the noise I pick up. He doesn't look very strong either. He probably relies heavily on his quirk and hasn't done a lot of training with his body, Izuku surmises and Hitoshi snorts. Remind me to never get on your bad side. You'd make a terrifying villain if you ever turned, he adds. Then it's a good thing I want to be a hero, Izuku says with a sharp grin, and Hitoshi snorts. The hour of recreational games comes to an end and the call for the first 2 tournament contestants to head to the arena comes over the speakers and they both get up. That's you. I'll be watching. Kick his butt, Hitoshi says with a grin, and Izuku nods before they head out. Hitoshi stops at the entrance to the field and Izuku keeps walking to where 𝐒𝐿mentos has finished building a large stage for them to fight on. Izuku walks up the steps, heart beating in his throat as he tunes out the cheering, palms sweating as he stops halfway to the center. Across from him, the blonde hero student Monoma sneers at him as Midnight calls their match to order, Yamada telling their names and class over the speakers. Ready. Midnight calls out and Izuku nods as does Monoma. Begin, she cracks her WHP and Izuku doesn't move. With a grin, Monoma rushes him and Izuku holds his ground, settling into a solid stance and waits. With a laugh, Monoma goes to grab his arm and Izuku parries his touch aside with a smack of his hand. He tries again and Izuku turns at the last second, grabbing his arm, and heaves Monoma over his shoulder to slam him onto the cement floor. A cry ripples across the stands and Monoma grins from his sprawl as Izuku feels his hand on his wrist, but Izuku grins back as the blonde winces at the sudden increase in sound he no doubt is picking up. The teen staggers to his feet, shaking his head, and Izuku goes in for the attack this time, punching and kicking, forcing the blonde back as Monoma blocks and dodges, too distracted by his suddenly increased hearing to realize what's going on or to even try to speak. He drops the quirk, but before he can do anything, Izuku spins, free leg coming up in a high roundhouse kick that knocks into his jaw and sends him flying a few feet away across the boundary line to sprawl on the ground. Midoriya wins. Midnight shouts and the crowd roars. Grinning, Izuku holds out a hand to Monoma, who glares and smacks his hand away before standing while rubbing his jaw and stalks off in a huff. Shrugging, Izuku walks down the stairs and rushes over to Hitoshi, who is half bent over laughing. He looked like some offended cat that had its tail stepped on. He huffs out and Izuku snorts. "Come on, let's find a seat to watch from the stands," Izuku says and grabs his friend's hand to drag him up the nearest staircase. The next matchup between Todoroki and 𝐒𝐿 is worrying to Hitoshi. He glances at Izuku, who has to face that powerhouse next, but his friend's eyes seem to glow with determination and the beginnings of a plan. Hitoshi decides to not say anything. Once the ice is melted and 𝐒𝐿 is freed, they both get to watch with unholy glee as Ida makes a fool of himself as Mai demonstrates her babies for the world to see. "Oh gods, this is too good," Hitoshi whispers as he and Izuku laugh. Mai, finished with showing off her last baby, steps over the line and Ida is announced as the winner. The fourth match is a girl named Kendo from 1B against a red-headed boy from 1A. Giant fists meet hardened skin, and though she knocks Kirishima around a bit, she can't get through his defense and the redhead manages to push her from the stage with a heavy hit. The next match is another 1A and 1B matchup with a teen who has a similar quirk to Kirishima, but with steel, and a girl with pink skin that Hitoshi vaguely remembers shooting acid. The girl, Ashido, is quick, using her acid to skate around the stage and keep away from Tetsu's fists. She even manages to start eating away at his steel exterior with her acid, but she misjudges a turn, hits a rough patch of ground already eaten away by her acid, and Tetsu manages to get a hold on her before he bodily throws her out of bounds, wincing and shaking his hands as they smoke from touching her acid. After the field is repaired, Tokoyami and some blonde named Kaminari that Hitoshi remembers had some form of electricity face off, and the blonde rushes forward. Hitoshi honestly believes Tokoyami will lose, knowing the teen's weakness to light, and at first it seems that way as Dark Shadow rushes ahead. Kaminari unleashes a huge surge of electricity that has Dark Shadow shrinking back and shocks Tokoyami, but Tokoyami recovers and looks around expecting an attack only to see Kaminari standing there with a blank expression on his face, brain completely fried by his own attack. Dark Shadow quickly shoots out, gently grabbing the teen before softly setting him out of bounds, and the match is called. The next matchup is Bakugo against some girl named Yorozu, and it is honestly a slaughter. She manages to pull out a shield a few times against Bakugo's explosions, but the blonde is too fast, quickly changing direction midair using his explosions, and the force of his explosions is too much, quickly throwing her out of the ring before she can react quickly enough, and the match is called. Izuku wishes Hitoshi luck before he rushes down to the field, and then it's his turn to fight. Remembering Izuku's advice, he decides to hide his quirk until he faces Bakugo. Better to not remind the angry Pomeranian about his quirk. Uraraka is cute, bubbly, and has a hard glint in her eyes that reminds him too much of Izuku, and he grins. This is going to be fun. Midnight cracks her WHP, announcing the start of the match, and they both rush forward. Uraraka does as Izuku predicted, going for the instant win as she tries to touch him to activate her quirk. Hitoshi grabs her wrist as he turns slightly and, gripping her neck, sends her careening towards the edge of the field, and she has to hastily right herself. With a determined look, she rushes him again and Hitoshi copies some of Izuku's moves from earlier, parrying her attempts to touch him all while leading her towards a different edge. She seems to realize what he's doing because she backs off. "You're tough," she huffs out, wiping her sweat from her brow. "You haven't even used your quirk yet," she adds. "I don't need it to win this match," Hitoshi says with a grin, and she grins back before rushing him again. Ducking under her reach, he sweeps his leg, remembering doing this so many times to try and take his dad down, though he's never managed it. Uraraka, though, is not shouter, and she yelps as her legs go out from under her and lands with a grunt as the breath is knocked from her lungs. Hitoshi lunges at her, flipping her onto her front and yanking her arms around until he has her limbs locked behind her back. "Yield," he huffs out as he puts pressure on her arm warningly. Uraraka wiggles and tries to break free, but he's got the leverage, muscle and weight to keep her pinned, and it doesn't seem like she's ever studied any ways to break grapples. "Yield," Hitoshi orders again, adding more pressure, and she winces in pain. Uraraka sighs and droops as she stops fighting. "I yield," she calls out. Midnight cracks her WHP, 𝐭 wins. Grinning, Hitoshi gets off her and offers a hand. She takes it with a grin and laughs as she scratches at her head. "You're good, 𝐭. You completely had me on the defensive and everything," she says as they walk off the stage. "Thanks, I've had some training," he admits. "Oh, it shows. Are you aiming for the hero course?" she asks. "I am," he admits with a small grin. "I hope you get in. I want a rematch," she declares with a clenched fist and burning eyes, and then waves at him before running off. Not sure how to take that declaration, Hitoshi starts to make his way back to where he left Izuku and meets him halfway up the staircase. "Toshi, that was amazing," Izuku cries, jumping to hug him, and Hitoshi has to brace before they tumble down the stairs. "Thanks," Hitoshi says with a grin. "You're up next against Todoroki. I hope you have a plan," he adds. "Oh, I do, don't worry," Izuku says with a grin, and Hitoshi knows that look. "Wish me luck, Toshi." "Good luck and try not to kill him," he adds Shouter's usual advice. "I won't," Izuku says with a wave and disappears down the stairs and out of sight. Izuku knows what everyone is thinking. They see Todoroki's overwhelming power, especially in his last match against that guy 𝐒𝐿, and they automatically assume he'll win against Izuku, but they, like a lot of people, don't see. When he'd first spotted Todoroki at the start of the first challenge, he'd already pegged his quirk chimism at first glance. It's a rare phenomenon, but he's read up on examples when he went on research binges about quirk science. It had later been confirmed when he noticed that Todoroki's ice only came from his right side. When Tokoyami had explained that he also apparently had fire, Izuku knew it came from his left side. He'd also noticed that no matter what the situation, Todoroki never uses his fire. That is his first mistake. As he steps out onto the stage, Izuku can already hear the faint shivers coming from Todoroki, the hum of his muscles struggling to warm up from overusing his ice. Whatever his reasoning for not using his full power, Izuku honestly doesn't care right now. He has a goal to get into the heroics course, and before that, to face Toshi one-on-one in this tournament. So he needs to take Todoroki down, overwhelming power or not. As they square off, he ignores the crowd, fading it out as he focuses on Todoroki. If there's one thing Aizawa beat into his head over and over, it's that no quirk is without a weakness and no quirk is unstoppable. Find the weakness and you can beat them. Todoroki has been doing a lot of big ice attacks here lately, against the 0-pointer, in the cavalry battle, and against 𝐒𝐿. He's got to be running low on stamina, and by the way he's shivering, he's not completely immune to the backlash from his own quirk. So, Izuku needs to wear him down. Midnight's WHP cracks and Izuku purses his lips, throwing his voice out. He and Yamada had worked a bit on honing his quirk to make sound-based attacks. It's still largely a work in progress, mainly because they wanted to focus more on his physical training for the entrance exam, and then with school, there hasn't been as much time to train with quirks, but Izuku had practiced at home and he unleashes one of his nicer ones now. As a low hum fills his ears that Todoroki can't possibly begin to hear, Todoroki lashes out with his right side and Izuku dodges from the largish glacier that shoots out of the ground. Not as big as his last one, but it would certainly hurt if Izuku got hit by it. Todoroki frowns, no doubt wondering how he missed Izuku, and Izuku grins at him as the teen shakes his head. He lashes out again with a smaller, more precise attack and Izuku dodges that too. The crowd around them is silent, but Izuku pays them no mind. Izuku can already see the infrasound frequency taking effect, the boy starting to pale a bit and grimace as nausea hits him suddenly and he tries to figure out what's wrong. "You don't look so good, Todoroki-kun. Is everything alright?" Izuku asks across from him and Todoroki grimaces again, firms his stance and lashes out. This attack even smaller and completely off the mark, Izuku barely having to move to dodge it. Izuku takes his chance and rushes him, jumping over a lash of ice and throws a punch that Todoroki barely manages to dodge, stumbling back as his sense of balance takes a nosedive. He shakes his head again and lashes out with another wave of ice and Izuku spins around it, aiming for another punch and this time it connects, catching the teen in his stomach and he wheezes as he stumbles back even further. Todoroki looks ready to fall over as he straightens, sweating and swaying and Izuku grimaces. "Sorry, Todoroki-san. Maybe next time you'll bring your full power to a fight rather than using half." Izuku apologizes and kicks out, foot catching the teen in the chest and sends him sprawling back across the line. Izuku stops the sound attack and the crowd roars in surprise. Izuku rushes forward and offers a hand to Todoroki. "Hey, take it easy. Just breathe. It'll fade in a bit," Izuku tells him as he helps Todoroki to his feet. "What was that?" he asks in confusion, eyes a little unfocused. "My quirk," Izuku explains. "Sorry about using it like that, but well, I wasn't planning to lose," Izuku says with a shrug as a couple of robots with a stretcher arrive. "Sorry again," Izuku calls as Todoroki is carted off and then Izuku rushes from the stage to disappear back into the tunnels to find Hitoshi. "What the hell, Aizu? What was that?" Hitoshi whisper yells in excitement, eyes wide in disbelief. Something Yamada and I have been working on for a bit. It took a bit longer to build up to the right frequency than I expected. I need more practice," Izuku mutters. "What?" Hitoshi asks in shock. "I'll explain later. Come on, I want to see the next match," Izuku explains and drags Hitoshi back to their seats to watch. It takes a few minutes for the ice to be cleared away and the stage repaired and then Kirishima and Ida face off. It surprisingly doesn't last long. Ida goes off with a straight attack, his legs putting on a burst of speed. Kirishima hardens and digs his feet in and they slam together with a heavy crack as Ida tries to shove Kirishima out of the ring as the redhead's hardened feet dig deep furrows into the concrete as he braces. At the last second, Kirishima shifts his stance, grips Ida and with a heavy throw using the momentum from Ida's engines, he tosses the taller teen over his head and out of the ring a few feet behind him. The crowd cheers as the two boys leave the stage, Cementos repairing the damage. Then it's on to the next fight, with Tetsu facing off against Tokoyami and Dark Shadow. Tokoyami and Dark Shadow go in strong, Dark Shadow attempting to slam Tetsu out of the ring, but with a heavy metallic clang, he's held at bay by the stronger teen. With a growl, Tetsu shoves Dark Shadow off and rushes Tokoyami like a bull charging. Dark Shadow barely manages to get a hold of the metal teen before he can hit Tokoyami, but Tetsu manages to pull Dark Shadow off, the sentient quirk not strong enough with the sun shining down as it is and with the way it's refracting off of Tetsu's metallic skin. Tetsu manages to dart forward and land a heavy hit. To Tokoyami, the avian flying back as Dark Shadow catches him. Tetsu doesn't waste a moment and lunges forward, grabbing the still reeling Tokoyami and throws him out of the ring with a roar and the crowd roars with him. Tokoyami is carted off out of the arena on a stretcher and Tetsu throws up a fist to the crowd before rushing off. "Ready, Toshi?" Izuku asks with a grin. "More than ready," Hitoshi says with a grin and Izuku waves as his best friend runs for the field. Hitoshi can feel Bakugo's glare on him as he steps onto the stage and smirks at him. He's been looking forward to this matchup since it was announced. While it won't be as satisfying as rearranging Bakugo's face like he sometimes wishes, making him lose will be just as sweet and will PSS the blonde off like nothing else could. Midnight steps up, Bakugo vs ♀, ready, start. And she cracks her WHP. Bakugo growls and explosions snap at his palms as he flies forward, and Hitoshi ducks under his predicted right punch and rolls away from the resulting explosion. What's the matter, Bakugo? No longer the golden boy like you were back in middle school. Hitoshi tosses out with a smirk, and Bakugo howls in rage. Shut your mouth, you dash. Bakugo starts to scream and then goes still, explosion stopping as he just stands there waiting for Hitoshi's orders. Hitoshi barely feels any resistance from the blonde, which is honestly not surprising. Bakugo has always been more brawn than brain. Now his dads, they make him work for his wins when he does manage to get them under. Walk out of the ring, Hitoshi orders, and Bakugo turns towards the nearest edge of the ring and starts to walk. The crowd is silent as they watch the blonde walk silently towards the ring and step over the line. Midnight's WHP cracks, Shinsoku wins. Hitoshi lets Bakugo go, and the teen looks around in confusion before a look of pure rage crosses over his face. Before he can shout anything or lunge at Hitoshi, Midnight cracks her WHP again, drawing his attention away from Hitoshi. Clear the stage, boys, for the next match, she says with a wink, but her eyes never leave Bakugo's. With a snarl, Bakugo turns away and stalks off. Thanks, Hitoshi whispers to Midnight, and she sends him a wink before shooing him off the stage. He passes Izuku on his way back for his next match. You did it! Izuku cries, running up and hugging Hitoshi. You looked so cool, Toshi. Thanks, Hitoshi says with a grin. Good luck against Kirishima. He looks like he'll be hard to beat. Not really. Izuku waves off, and Hitoshi can see that look in his eyes again. Evil genius, he says simply, and Izuku for once doesn't deny it. You better win your match, Toshi. I'll be waiting, he says simply with a wink and runs past him to head out into the arena. Hitoshi feels his cheeks heat up and snorts before turning towards one of the waiting rooms to watch on the screen in there rather than going to the stands. Izuku runs up the steps with a grin. Kirishima is also rushing up with his own answering grin as they meet towards the middle of the ring. Midoriya-san, your last fight was so manly, dude. Let's have a good fight too, Kirishima cries out. Yeah, Izuku nods and Midnight steps up. Midoriya versus Kirishima, ready, fight. She cracks her WP and Kirishima hardens his whole body before charging at Izuku. Grinning, Izuku purses his lips and a whistle rings out. It goes high, building in frequency until Kirishima is wincing as he draws near Izuku, and Izuku ducks under his wide punch, kicking the back of his knee, and winces himself as it feel like he just kicked stone. Pulling back, he keeps the whistle going, building it higher until it passes normal hearing range, and Kirishima stops mid-lunge to grab his ears in pain, and Izuku watches as he loses control of his quirk. With a grin, he rushes forward and slams his fist into Kirishima's face, snapping his head to the side, and the boy staggers away before getting his feet under him and grits his teeth against the pain as he hardens his body again. Izuku's high whistle cuts off and he goes low this time, the sound going deep. Kirishima rushes him again, and Izuku dances away from sharp punches and even sharper elbows as the low whistle starts to vibrate the air around Kirishima. The redhead shakes his head with a wince as lunges again, and Izuku concentrates as much sound as he dares right where he needs to. As the vibrations hum through Kirishima's body, the boy freezes in surprise for just a second, and Izuku takes advantage of it, planting his foot right in his chest. Kirishima's hardening, weakened by his distraction and the vibrations humming through it, breaks, and the teen staggers back as the air leaves his lungs in a whoosh as he tries to stay on his feet. Izuku presses forward, breathing as he brings an elbow to Kirishima's nose, and the cartilage cracks under the blow. With a wince, Kirishima pulls away, blood flowing from his broken nose, and Izuku rushes him in a full-body tackle, forcing him back and back, increasing the strength of his whistle as he pushes and with one last shove, forces Kirishima's feet over the line. The crowd surges up as Izuku stops the sound and offers a hand up to Kirishima where the redhead had fallen. Good fight, Izuku says with a grin. That was so manly, dude. How did you even do that? Kirishima asks, holding his nose with one hand as he accepts Izuku's hand up with the other. It's too complicated to explain right now, Izuku says with a sheepish grin. Nah, you're right. There's another match. You'll need to tell me how that trick worked later, though, okay? He asks with a grin, No anger or malice in his voice even as he bleeds from his broken nose. "Ah, yes, sure." Izuku agrees, looking a little bewildered at his serenity. "Kirishima-kun, go get that checked over by recovery girl," Midnight orders. "Yes, sensei," Kirishima says with a grin. "Good match, Midoriya," he adds and waves before walking off as Izuku heads in a different direction. Hitoshi sees Izuku walk off the field from the other side of the field as he readies for his own match. Midnight calls the next fight and Hitoshi walks out to cheers and climbs the steps up onto the stage to see his opponent, Tetsu, walking towards him. The last match of the semifinals, ♯vs Tetsu, ready, begin. Midnight cracks her WHP and Tetsu grins before hardening into steel. "Sorry, but I'm going to have to make this quick," he growls out. "Is your fly down?" Hitoshi calls out while pointing. "What?" he asks and starts to look down before Hitoshi's quirk connects and Hitoshi laughs. "Walk out of the ring," Hitoshi orders and he does so without any resistance. ♯wins. Midnight calls out and the crowd is silent for a moment before it breaks out in cheers. The final match between ♯and Midoriya is next. Midnight calls out and Hitoshi watches as Tetsu walks off with a look of confusion on his face at what happened before he spots Izuku rushing up to the field. Izuku's grinning large enough to crack his face and seems to bounce with energy as he comes up the stairs. Hitoshi feels his chest constrict a bit at the sight of his best friend and grins back. They really did it. They made it all the way to the finals. If UA doesn't take notice of them, he doesn't know what else will convince them they deserve the chance to prove themselves as heroes. He also knows with absolute certainty that he wouldn't have made it this far without Izuku there to plant the ideas in his head and push him forward. "Ready, Toshi?" Izuku asks quietly, just between them. "Yeah, you," he asks. "Always. No holding back, got it?" Izuku reminds him. "I would never think of doing such a thing, Aizu," Hitoshi says with a sharp grin and Izuku nods as Midnight steps up. Here we are. The final fight of this year's first-year sports festival between ♯ Hitoshi and Midoriya Izuku. Who will win? Ready, start. Midnight cracks her WHP and Hitoshi doesn't waste any time to bull rush Izuku. Hitoshi's got the height, reach and weight in this fight, but Izuku's small, fast and not afraid to fight dirty. With his quick reflexes and quicker mind, Hitoshi's going to need to put his all into beating his best friend. Izuku ducks under his first punch and Hitoshi barely manages to pull away before he can hit him in the side with a quick fist. Pulling back for a second, Hitoshi circles Izuku and sees his friend watching him before he darts forward to kick out at him and Hitoshi barely gets his arms up in time to block the kick before a punch lands in his stomach and he coughs, but pushes through, grabbing Izuku's retreating arm and pulls him in close to bring up his knee into his side. Hitoshi's grip loosens with his attack and Izuku manages to pull away, breathing hard and rubbing his side a bit before grinning and rushing forward again. He feints at Hitoshi's side again and tries to dart around to get behind him and Hitoshi rolls away before he can kick his knees in and comes back up with a huff, turning to block another kick and punches out, catching Izuku in the shoulder, sending him staggering back. He pushes the advantage and wraps his arms around Izuku's upper body, pinning his arms. The smaller teen struggles, jerking his head back and Hitoshi barely manages to move his head aside before he gets his nose broken and feels the blow on his collarbone, but he grits his teeth and keeps staggering towards the boundary. Izuku growls, clawing at Hitoshi's arms with what leverage he can and tries to kick back at him, but Hitoshi's got the leverage he needs and Izuku can't get the angle right to do any damage. The edge comes up finally and with a yell, he throws Izuku out of the ring, barely pulling his arms away before his friend can latch onto him and pull himself back in. Izuku lands on his but just outside of the ring. There's a beat of silence and then the crowd roars, coming to its feet and Hitoshi stares down at Izuku as he realizes he won. He just won gold medal. Izuku grins up at him, looking happy that Hitoshi won. He jumps up and hugs Hitoshi. "We did it, Toshi." Izuku crows as cameras flash. I won gold," he gets out, still wrapping his head around it as Izuku pulls back. "You do realize we're going to celebrate so hard tonight with so much food. My mother is probably already plotting with your dad about what to make," Izuku says and Hitoshi laughs and laughs, bending over at the thought because how did he get this lucky to have his best friend and these crazy people in his life? It takes a bit for the medal ceremony to be set up, and Izuku and Hitoshi are hustled off to a room where Tetsu and Kirishima are already waiting and apparently bonding over their shared quirk by having an arm wrestling match. "Oh hey, you're here," Kirishima cries out and Tetsu looks up, their wrestling match forgotten in the face of new people. "Man, your fight was intense, dudes. You guys have some major skills. Where'd you two learn to fight like that?" Kirishima asks excitedly. His nose looks fine, no doubt healed by Recovery Girl. "My dad's," Hitoshi says. "His dad's," Izuku says at the same time. "Nice," Kirishima says with a grin. Tetsu walks up with a big frown looking down at Hitoshi and he thinks for a moment that the larger teen is going to cause a scene and then he grins. "Not bad, bro. Not bad at all. I'll have to watch out for you next time." He crows and slaps Hitoshi heavily on the shoulder and Hitoshi winces because that's the shoulder Izuku headbutted him. Recovery Girl thankfully takes that moment to come in the room and gives him and Izuku a look over. She gives them a kiss each to help with the bruises and some gummies before walking off. Midnight and Cementos come in a few minutes later and lead them to the room where they'll ride the podiums up into the center of the arena and gets them situated on the podiums, saying it will only be a few more minutes. Finally, there's a beep with a flashing light to tell them what's happening and then the ceiling above them opens up as they start to rise into the center of the arena to the roars of the crowd as they cheer. Hitoshi can see far too many cameras pointed at him, but bears it as his pops announces over the speakers that All Might will be handing out the medals and the man appears from nowhere laughing his booming laugh, standing on the edge of the stadium's roof before jumping down to land in front of them. Holding out the medal case for everyone to see, he gestures to Midnight who holds it while he pulls out the 2 bronze medals. "What excellent work, young Tetsu and young Kirishima. You showed the world your mettle today, but don't rest on your laurels just yet. Learn from your fights, grow stronger and know that the world is watching you after today. You certainly said I am here today," he says with a laugh and they both bow their heads as he puts the medals over their necks and thank him for the advice. He moves on to Izuku and takes the silver medal from the case. "And young Midoriya, you certainly showed that brains are an important part of any strategy. You showed great leadership and clever ingenuity to lead your friends, your team and yourself to this point today. Be proud of your accomplishments," All Might says and Izuku beams at the hero and accepts the silver medal. All Might grabs the gold medal and steps in front of Hitoshi. "And last, but most certainly not least, young ♯. It takes great strength of mind, spirit and body to do what you have done today. Few can set such a goal and fewer can follow through with it. Be proud of your accomplishments and know you have most certainly proven yourself today in the eyes of everyone watching," All Might says and Hitoshi grins as he accepts the gold medal. These young men have shown their true strength today. They have taken to heart everything it means to be a student here at UA. Let's congratulate them for all their hard work and look forward to where these young men are headed in the future. Now, everyone with me, go beyond. All Might cries out. Plus ultra, the crowd screams back. Izuku is exhausted as he and Hitoshi trudge back towards the locker room to change out of their gym clothes now that the sports festival is done. He can't stop grinning and looking down at his medal. Honestly, if there's anyone Izuku is okay with losing to, it's Hitoshi. He glances over at his best friend and sees his sporting a similar exhausted grin. "Can you believe we did it?" Izuku asks softly and Hitoshi looks over at him. 3 years, Toshi, he says and watches as understanding dawns on Hitoshi's face. 3 years of hard work, he murmurs with a nod. "Did you imagine this when we first started planning this?" Hitoshi asks. Izuku shrugs. "Well, I first saw us getting in through the entrance exam, but yeah, I saw it this way a bit too. It would have been like this even if we had already gotten into the hero course. We couldn't have done it any other way," Izuku admits with a soft grin. "I'm glad I lost to you, Toshi." "I'm sure you're already planning for our next matchup," Hitoshi jokes and Izuku can't keep the sharp grin off his face. "Maybe," he admits cheekily and Hitoshi laughs, throwing his head back and he looks so happy in that moment. Izuku feels his cheeks heat up and looks away before Hitoshi can see it, thankful that the door to the locker room is right there and rushes forward to open it for him and Hitoshi. They quickly shower and change into their uniforms since they wore them to school this morning. Yamada and Aizawa are waiting outside the locker room for them. There they are. Yamada cries out and rushes up to pull them into a bone-breaking hug and laughs happily. "You did amazing, you two," he says, pulling back to look at them. "Really?" Izuku asks softly. "Problem child, stop fishing for compliments," Aizawa mutters, but Izuku can see the proud look on his face. "I expected nothing less from you two," he adds with a small smile, and Hitoshi looks fit to burst his grinning so hard at his dad's praise. "So, are you both still looking to transfer into heroics?" Aizawa asks, and they both nod hard. "All right. I'll inform Nezu, though I'm sure the rat already knows. You'll know the final decision come Monday," Aizawa states simply. "Wait, really? That seems fast," Izuku says with a frown. Yamada laughs. "You boys took gold and silver over every other first-year student and made quite a display for the world with not only your quirk ability, but your physical skills and mental sharpness too. I think you're more than ready to transfer. Most students who make it to the third round and make a good impression need some training up before they can be considered for a transfer," Hisashi explains. "Come on, let's get going before the traffic gets too heavy," Aizawa says, and they nod with matching grins as they follow the two adults from the arena towards the teacher's parking. The drive does take a bit longer than normal with all the traffic from people leaving UA's campus, but they still make good time. They arrive at their apartment complex and the guard congratulates both of them loudly as he lets them in. As they walk into the apartment, they jump as confetti poppers go off. Izuku looks to see his mom as well as Ms. Joke, whom they've met from Aizawa working with her before, shout congratulations loudly at them. "Mom, I thought you had to work late," Izuku says in surprise. "Takeda-san was watching with me at work, and after you won silver, he sent me home early so we could celebrate," 𝐒𝐿 explains with a laugh. "Congratulations, sweetheart, you did so well," 𝐒𝐿 says with a smile and a hug. "Thanks, Mom," Izuku says, returning the hug. "And don't think I forgot about you, Hitoshi-kun. Come here," 𝐒𝐿 orders, and Hitoshi flushes, but allows her to wrap him in a hug as she congratulates him. "Nemurai should be here soon," Aizawa informs Ms. Joke, who grins and nods as they finish getting out of their shoes and enter the apartment proper. Midnight appears 20 minutes after them, having been caught up in traffic, and the celebration continues with food and drink all around. Izuku and Hitoshi are exhausted from the day of so much physical exertion, and they end up on one of the couches, a cat in each of their laps as they listen to the chatter around them, 𝐒𝐿 laughing at one of Ms. Joke's jokes while Yamada and Aizawa talk about something quietly, and Nemurai adds her own 2 cents to the other women's conversation. They end up passing out on the couch, the day finally catching up to them, medals still around their necks and smiling in their sleep. Monday rolls around quicker than they expect. After spending the rest of the weekend recovering from the sports festival and texting back and forth, Izuku finds himself sliding into their car as usual, and the 4 set off for UA. No one brings up the sports festival or the possibility of a transfer, which is both relieving and stressful because all Izuku has been thinking about is the transfer. Mainly that there might only be one spot open and they'll have to decide who will get it, and while Izuku would gladly hand it over to Hitoshi in a heartbeat, it would still hurt to do so because he's worked so hard to get to this point. He's also sure Hitoshi would do the same, and then neither would be able to decide who would get it and they'd be at a stalemate, so neither could transfer in. Needless to say, his mind has been spiraling a bit, but the car ride is mostly quiet, like usual. Yamada has the radio turned low and hums along to different songs that come on. Aizawa drinks his coffee and mostly watches the scenery passing by or talking with Yamada about work stuff. Hitoshi is a slumped mess next to him, both anxious and tired because his insomnia flared up again, and Izuku feels like he's about to come out of his skin before they even find out if they made the cut or not. Aizawa and Yamada wave them off to get to class and head for the teacher's lounge, and Izuku drags a tired Hitoshi to their homeroom. The few already there clap at their arrival, and that at least wakes Hitoshi up enough, the other teen flushing a bit with Izuku at the sudden cheering and congratulations. They take their seats while they wait for Yamada to appear at the start of class and try to calm their racing hearts. 15 minutes later, the man in question comes in with a few minutes to spare before the morning bell rings and sets his stuff down with a grin as he hums a tune he heard on the radio that morning. Morning, little listeners, he greets the few students that say hello to him. Izuku can feel how strung tight Hitoshi is behind him as Yamada quickly shuffles through some papers before he finally nods and looks right at them. Midoriya-kun, Shinso-kun, you've got a meeting with Nezu in 10 minutes. Best not be late and bring your things with you, he says with a grin, and they both jump up. The class is silent around them as they walk up to the front and accept the hall passes. Yamada gives them a wink and an encouraging smile before shooing them from the room. Out in the hall, after the door closes behind them and the whispers break out, they quickly share a glance and then set off at a jog to get to Nezu's office within the time limit. Neither has been to Nezu's office before, but Izuku had memoized the main building's layout, so it's not hard to find the elevator up to the right floor. It takes a moment to find the right door, and then Izuku forces himself to knock, stomach in knots with butterflies trapped inside it. Come in, Midoriya-kun, Shinso-kun, Nezu's voice calls out, and Izuku slides the door open. Inside is a large office with a desk and computer set up to fit the small mammal behind it. There are a few chairs in front of the desk, but off to the side is a pair of couches with a small coffee table set between them. An electric kettle is set on the table with cups already put out, and sitting on one of the couches with a knowing smirk, Aizawa watches them enter. Ah, good morning boys, sorry to make you wait. We had a few last-minute things to finish up before we could get this meeting off to a start, Nezu says with a smile and motions towards the couches. Take a seat, I'll be with you in just a moment, he says easily, and they both nod and do as directed. Nezu prints a few things off his computer, grabbing them out of the printer's tray, and then jumps down off his chair to walk over to take the seat next to Aizawa. Tea, he asks as he sets the papers face down on the table. Yes please. Izuku manages to get out of a tight throat, and Hitoshi nods silently. Nezu hums softly as he readies some tea for them and Aizawa as well before making his own cup. He takes a slow sip, and Izuku is about ready to snap with how tense he is when the mammal sets the cup down with a click and smiles at them again. So, he says simply, Aizawa-kun here says you would like a transfer into the heroics department. Ah, wise, Nezu-sensei. Izuku nods and Hitoshi nods silently again. Izuku manages to take a sip without his hands shaking and sloshing the tea over the rim, barely. Hitoshi doesn't even glance at his cup. Of course, Nezu says with another smile. Now, normally we don't allow just anyone to transfer, Nezu starts off with, and Izuku feels his heart skip a beat before he continues. They of course have to be sponsored by a teacher who then needs to put in the time to train them up to standards to enter the heroics course. After which, they then need to take an exam to show that they've improved enough since the sports festival to join the classes, Nezu states. Izuku wants to curse at another hoop to jump through, but is more than willing to jump if it means he can become a hero student. That sounds reasonable. He gets out and feels how tense Hitoshi is beside him. I'm glad you agree, Nezu says with a sunny smile and takes another sip. Now, Shinso-kun, Aizawa-kun has offered to sponsor you to the heroics department. And Midoriya-kun, Yamada-kun has offered to sponsor you to the heroics department as well. So that part is well in hand. As well, they have assured me you are both well trained, having done so for 3 years under their tutelage, which handily waves away the training up part, especially with the performances you both put on at the sports festival, Nezu explains, and Izuku nods. Normally, we would then have you take an exam at a future time and date, and then once a spot opened up in one of the classes, you would then be placed in the class and go from there, Nezu explains, and Izuku feels the but coming. However, considering that you are both the gold and silver medalist of this year's sports festival, I believe I am well within my rights to waive the exam portion of the requirements, he says cheekily, and Izuku deflates a bit in shock. Really? Hitoshi finally speaks up. Indeed. You both showed the qualities we look for in our hero students, the same qualities we look for in the transfer exam to determine if transfer students will be a good fit for the program. It would be redundant to test you on something we are already aware of. Nezu waves off, and Izuku feels his heart speed up again. So what happens now? Izuku asks softly, not daring to hope. Nezu nods. Originally, we only had one available spot open for a transfer student to take. Now normally that would have gone to Shinso-kun as the gold medalist, and Midoriya-kun, you would have been placed on a waiting list. However, we happen to have a sudden transfer this morning from one of the classes into the general education program. So it seems we have spots available for both of you, he explains with a grin, and Izuku lets out a breath he didn't even realize he was holding. Really, he asks, hands shaking with relief. Of course, Nezu says with a nod. In fact, both spots happen to be in Class 1A under Aizawa-kuen's tutelage, thus why he is here. Aizawa-kuen, do you accept both transfers into your class? Nezu asks. Aizawa turns dark eyes onto the two of them and then a small smile breaks across his face. I do, he nods and Nezu chuckles. Very well. ♀Midoriya-kuen, welcome to the Heroics program. Now, we just need to fill out some paperwork. Midoriya-kuen, you'll need to get your mother's signature to confirm the transfer. ♀, your parents have already signed off on the transfer, he says with a knowing look at Aizawa. As well, you'll need to submit your costume designs before the end of the week so the support company we work with can create them. I'm told you have commissioned Hatsume-san from the support course to make some support gear for you, he says, and they both nod, too relieved to say anything as the words sink in. Good. Majima-kuen will get the gear and the required documentation to the company to go over them, refine them and then recreate them into a streamlined appearance to fit your costume requests. I believe that is everything. Aizawa-kuen can help you with the necessary paperwork and getting your new uniforms for the hero course, Nezu says brightly with a clap of his hands to indicate the finality of the meeting. Thank you, Nezu-sensei, Izuku says nearly breathlessly, bowing low, and Hitoshi copies him, muttering his thanks too. Nonsense, you two. You did all the hard work. I merely signed some forms and arranged it so the two of you could have a seamless transfer. You should be proud of what you have accomplished in such a short time, and I greatly look forward to what more you will accomplish in the future, Nezu says brightly and sincerely. Standing, they accept the forms from him that he hands over and with one final bow, follow Aizawa out of the office. They wait until they get far enough away before letting out sighs of relief. Oh gods, Izuku mutters in relief, leaning against the nearby wall. You did that on purpose, Hitoshi accuses his dad, who merely smirks at them sadistically. Merely a logical ruse to ensure you appreciated what has been handed to you, he states simply. Tell that to my poor heart, Hitoshi mutters, and Izuku snorts. Come on, problem children, we have things to do, Aizawa says with a huff, and they quickly stand back up to follow him. He leads them away from Nezu's office and to a different area until he unlocks a door and leads them into a storage area filled with uniforms. It's not hard to find hero course jackets in their sizes, 2 each, and he tells them to return their Gen Ed jackets after they've been washed. They both nod. He takes them to his office. Apparently someone is covering his homeroom this morning, and he walks them through filling out the transfer paperwork so it's all correct. Izuku will have his signed tonight and brought back in the morning. Then he dismisses them for the day, saying they can either take the train home or stay on campus and wait for a ride. He suggests they start working on their costume designs now and get them in sooner rather than later. They both decide to remain on campus for the day to do just that, with plans to meet up with Mai at lunch to go over their support gear and ways it can be integrated into their costume designs. Aizawa lets them go with a reminder to not do anything stupid, and then he heads to his class, leaving them standing out in the hall. They wait until he is long gone before Izuku looks at Hitoshi. Toshi, we're in the Heroics program, he whispers. We are, he says, sounding just as dazed as Izuku. With a grin, he grabs Izuku's arm and starts towing him towards the library. Come on. Let's get to cracking on our costume designs. If Dad says get it done soon, he means it, he reminds Izuku, and the teen nods, eagerly following to the library, ideas already spinning through his head. What do you think? Izuku asks Mai later that day as they sit outside eating lunch. Hitoshi is just basking in the fact that all their hard work finally paid off. Yes, they might be starting a bit behind the other hero students, but they'll catch up no matter what it takes. Mai glances over the rough sketches Izuku had drawn up for their costumes. Hitoshi had let him do it, well aware of how atrocious his drawing skills are. On 2 pages of sketch paper are 2 fleshed-out costume designs with tiny notes and comments written neatly for the costume designers. Hitoshi's is fairly simple. He's wanted to do a bit of homage to both his dad's and their own costumes for a while now, So the main body is a similar jumpsuit style to Eraserhead's costume, though a bit tighter around the arms and lower legs. Heavy steel-toe boots, arm and shin guards, reinforced fingerless gloves, a utility belt with lots of pouches, and padding placed strategically at various points to protect him from falls or hits. A hood is added with subtle purple pin striping with an extra panel that zips up in front of his face to cover his mask voice changer. The jumpsuit also has a higher neck with padding to protect his throat and hide the throat voice changer. Over it all is a black leather jacket, similar in cut to 𝐒𝐻𝑢's present MIC jacket with hidden panels of body armor sewn into it, protective, but breathable and easy to move in. All it needs is a capture scarf and a few other tools and it will be awesome. Izuku's had gone a different direction. He'd taken his Mockingbird name to heart, the whole thing dark storm cloud gray with darts of light gray and pale browns here and there to highlight parts of his costume, while a subtle feather pattern is sewn into parts of the costume. The bottoms consist of heavy-duty combat briefs with lots of pockets tucked into similar steel-toe boots like Hitoshi's. The upper part is a long-sleeved shirt that zips in the front sewn with hidden armor panels and a padded high collar to protect his neck and cover up his support gear when needed. A reversible three-quarter jacket goes over top, the inside plain black with a hood to cover his hair and more hidden body armor. A utility belt also like Hitoshi's wraps around his waist along with similar shin and arm guards for protection. Fingerless gloves and a wrist attachment to adjust his support gear and that can also be used to record Izuku's quirk if he needs to send something he heard. His neck piece, once Mai finishes it, will be much smaller and slimmer than present MIC's own directional speaker. It'll wrap snugly against his neck with discrete speakers hidden in it with small resonating rods for Izuku to direct his quirk into so it can send his voice through the speaker and let him throw his voice further or make it louder as needed. The earpieces will be nearly invisible in his ears with various functions once Mai gets done with them too. These look amazing, Mai says excitedly. She scans over the notes and comments. Good details and instructions too. That will help them design what you're looking for, she adds with a nod. Izuku flushes and grins. Thanks. I was trying for something easily understood after hearing you mutter about vague descriptions, Izuku explains and she nods with a cackle. Yes, well, we support people pride ourselves in delivering what the customer wants, no matter how vague, but, she adds with a bright, near-manic grin. I'm nearly finished with your gear, she says excitedly. Really? Hitoshi asks. Yep. I got really inspired after the festival and seen your quirks in action and I worked through the weekend to figure out the last tricky bits. You should come with me after lunch to support and we'll test them out, yes? She asks, nearly vibrating with excited energy. Definitely, Izuku says with Hitoshi nodding eagerly. Mai, you're amazing, he adds. All in a day's work, green bean. Just make sure to tell everyone where your gear came from and we'll be even, that and make sure no one works on it, but me, you hear, she adds with a finger wag. We promise, Hitoshi says eagerly. They finish their lunch and follow her back to support where Power Loader waves at them distractedly and they follow Mai to her workstation. Taking the completed gear to one of the test rooms so they can try them out, Mai writes down notes about fit and feel and how well it handles their quirks. The other two wear noise-cancelling headphones when Izuku uses his quirk to protect their ears. Hitoshi, with Mai's permission, uses Izuku's voice to brainwash her with both his mask voice changer and neck voice changer. I can definitely hear the hum through the voice changer. Resonator rods to pick up infrasonic sound waves were definitely the right way to go, Izuku admits once Hitoshi finishes testing his gear out. It would have taken me longer to figure it out if I wasn't already using them for your gear, Green Bean, Mai explains with glee. When you explained the hum, my mind went into overdrive and after that, boom, finished, she adds gleefully. My babies are so cute, aren't they, she adds. They're awe-inspiring, Mai, Hitoshi says seriously. Oh, that reminds me, Mai says turning to them. I took your ideas for my first baby of the school year and went full stealth with them, Mai explains and holds out what is probably a finished prototype of the metal ball she had shown them the first day they met. They're nearly silent and small enough to be hard to spot. I'm still figuring out the light refracting for invisibility, but if you'd like to add them to your gear, I can have them adjusted to work with your gear. I can make you a control panel too, Sleepy Cat, so that you can control them. Good for covert ops, you know, she says gleefully, petting her baby before pressing a button and its wings spring open with a soft snick and then begins to beat its wings silently. Izuku can pick up the hum, but even then it's very soft. So, spy cameras, Hitoshi says, and my nods eagerly. My, you spoil us. Hitoshi says with a grin, and my whoops. I'll finish cleaning up your gear and add the stealth drones as well to your gear, Mai says eagerly. Are you turning in your costume designs today or tomorrow, she asks. Probably today before we go home. Do you need us to wait? Izuku asks. Oh, no, I should be able to finish this all up by today, and my 𝐵𝐻𝐼ma-sensei will help me get all the paperwork filled out to submit for review by the support company. Mai waves off as she leads them back to her workstation. Okay, Izuku says and sits down next to her for a few minutes to add extra notes to both sketches about the gear and how it should fit with the design of the costumes, as well as adding an extra bit about getting a similar wrist attachment for Hitoshi so he can control the stealth drones as well as various other functions. You could use it as a database for various voices to sync to your voice changer. So you don't have to rely on anyone in a fight to have a voice, you can just pull up a pre-recorded one, Izuku explains. Oh, nice. Smart thinking. That'll help if they already know my quirk and my voice and won't talk to me, Hitoshi says with a grin. Exactly, Izuku says and finishes up the last of the notes. Anything you think I should add, he asks Mai, who's fiddling with Hitoshi's neck piece. She glances over it one last time. Nope, looks good. They'll add questions if they want any clarification and can update it later if something needs to be changed, Mai says with a shrug and goes back to her work. All right. We'll leave you to your work, Mai. Thank you again, Izuku says, grabbing his sketches and stuff to follow Hitoshi out, Mai waving distractedly, humming under her breath. We've still got a few hours until class is let out, Hitoshi speaks up with a grin. And I don't know about you, but I'm full of energy right now. Wanna do some extra training? He asks Izuku. Please, Izuku says with a grin, and they change course to go change into their gym clothes to find an empty gym to work out in. They turn in their costume designs that afternoon after working out for a while to burn off excessive energy. Aizawa nods approvingly at the costumes and notes, signing off on them and taking the paperwork they also filled out with all their measurements to send to the support company to use, as well as any limitations or requirements needed. Yamada laughs when they glare at him and accuse him of trying to give them a heart attack for stringing them along like he did that morning, and hugs them, congratulating them on making it into the hero course, though he says he'll miss having them in his class. Izuku goes home to tell his mother the good news, and they celebrate that night, going over the paperwork. A thick packet of papers stating his transfer to the heroics department, the various liability waivers, and a costume budget that states what is covered by UA and what is paid for out of pocket. He's worried they won't be able to afford some of it, but his mother reassures him that they can, and he nods. She also pulls out a gift for him. This is somewhat of a collaboration between myself, Aizawa-san, and Hisashi-san, 𝐒𝐭 admits with a small smile. They helped me with figuring out what I needed to know and gave me people to contact about having it commissioned, she explains as she hands over a small dark metal case. Mom? Izuku asks, throat tight. Well, go on, open it, she encourages, and Izuku swallows and nods with a grin before clicking the buttons on the latches and the lid pops open. There, nestled into foam cut to its shape, is small narrow rod of a dark matte metal. Tucked into the lid is a small booklet. Izuku carefully picks up the rod, brows going up because it's heavier than he was expecting. When he pulls out the booklet, he finds instructions for a collapsible staff. Mom, Izuku whispers. Well, go on, try it out, 𝐒𝐭 says excitedly, and Izuku nods, checking the instructions for how to activate it, and then stands up from the kitchen table to get some space and twists part of the rod. It slides effortlessly, and with a click and a hiss, the ends shoot out into a full-length staff. Izuku hefts it and finds the weight is what is used to in the staff he used when training with Yamada-san, and the balance is perfect, resting comfortably in his hand. Do you like it? She asks. I love it. When did you get this commissioned? He asks, looking over with wide eyes. At the beginning of the school year, she explains. I talked with Hisashi-san and Shouta-san about ways to help and support you, and they explained about getting Hitoshi his own capture scarf for when he got into the heroics department, and I decided that you needed your own gear too, and they helped me figure out what to get. He should be getting his scarf right now too, she adds with a grin. Izuku twists the section in the opposite direction and it retracts back into its compact form. Setting it back into the case, Izuku walks over and hugs his mom. "Thank you," he whispers huskily. "You're welcome, sweetheart. I know things haven't been the easiest, especially after your father left and it was just us, but I want you to know I'm proud of you and I love you so much. I'll worry, constantly, but I'll also support you, okay?" She promises. "I'll try to keep you from worrying too much," Izuku promises back and she nods. "Toshi and I will watch each other's back and Yamada-san and Aizawa-san will keep an eye on us too when you can't be there," he adds. "Good," Inko says. "Now, let's finish filling out these forms and then get started on dinner," she instructs and he nods, helping her fill out the last of the transfer forms and then helping out to make dinner. That night, before bed, he calls Hitoshi and they both scream near silently to each other and show off what their parents got them.